Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Justin Fitzgerald. I think I've either met or worked with you, each of you, over the last couple of years now. So hopefully I'm a familiar face, but I'm excited for our time here together. I get to serve as director of our Office for Service Learning and Civic Engagement. And I'm really excited about this group here because you're taking a step to get to know us a little better and to find out more information about how you can stay best involved with FGCU and connect with our students in all the best ways. So a lot of times partners will say, hey, I just need 20 people for Saturday. We're having a gala. Yes, we can absolutely help with that. But over the course of this morning, we're going to talk about all the ways that you can engage with our students beyond that, in deeper ways, in more fruitful ways for your organization. We're always looking for it to be the best win for you as well as win for our students developmentally. So yes, we can absolutely help with those kind of volunteer tasks, but we're going to talk about so much more. So I always tell partners when I'm talking with them, it's like walking up to a massive buffet and you're like, oh, I just came for this one wing. And then you leave. Yes, that wing may be really good, but the rest of the buffet is still sitting there. And we want you to be able to engage in all of that. So you can't engage in it if you don't know what else is on the buffet and how to access those different pieces of the buffet. So we'll talk about all that this morning. Some just general logistics before we get started. Restrooms, if you haven't found those, they're right outside the door to the right here. There's snacks in the back. We'll have lunch at about 11:45 or noon, along with a little 45-minute to an hour of networking at that time. Hopefully everybody got an agenda when you came in. On the top of the agenda, the top left, you can scan that and you will have a digital copy of this agenda. Why that matters is that everything in the agenda is hyperlinked. So if we're talking about a certain form or a certain page of our website or something like that, everything is hyperlinked. So yes, some people love a hard copy. You've got that if you need that. But if you want to follow any of the forms, hold on to this agenda and you can always scan that and come back to those hyperlinked areas of the agenda. So that is all intentionally done for you. And I'll mention it later in the day, but has anybody heard of FGCU Give Day? Yes, good answer. I saw your email. Yes, so today starts our 2-day long FGCU Give Day. And what that is a chance for everyone and anyone to raise funds for the things, the really amazing things that are happening here at FGCU. So you'll see FGCU Give Day emails probably from a lot of different offices on campus, but obviously, we think what we're doing really impacts the community in amazing ways, and we can do more of that with funding. Everything that we provide to our community agencies is completely free. So this workshop, our service learning fairs every spring and fall semester, a lot of the pieces and parts, the trips, the service trips where we bring students out to you, those are all provided to you for free. So if at any point today you think, you know what, I'd like to give a little something here. The top right corner, it is your chance to be able to give back to what we're doing so that we can do more of that and we can expand our services. As the university grows, our opportunities to serve you and to connect our students with everything that you're doing also grows. So anybody know how many students we have at FGCU now? I'll start with how many undergrad students? Anybody want to take a guess? I hear a 12, I hear a 20. Anybody else guess? We're at 14.5. So undergrad, we're 14.5, and we've got about 1,500 graduate students for a total of about 16,000 students. So, and we are growing. Every year we're growing a little bit. So keep that in mind. So what we're going to do, you can see on the agenda, the first hour or so, we're going to do an overview, and we've got, yes. Yeah. So I'm not the official to give you that final answer, but I can tell you that the president has, in different articles and in different speaking opportunities, he has publicly said that we will probably max out around 20, and that's our capacity. Some people say, oh, you've got plenty of land to build on, but it's actually protected land that we can't build on most of that. So what you see is pretty much what we have. Good question, and good point. if you have questions at any point, I want this to be as interactive as possible. I'm not someone who says save your questions for the end. Sometimes I'll say we'll talk about that again in a couple minutes, but absolutely interrupt with questions. Let's put everything out on the table as we go. But yeah, so the first hour or so, we'll go over a big general overview. So I'd love to see who has been a partner with us for a year or more. Excellent, excellent. And who's brand new? Either you are brand new to your position or your organization is brand new. Okay, so it's a good mix. And that's what we typically find. And so this first portion, no matter what workshop you come to, this first portion is always an overview. A lot of our veteran community partners say they still enjoy coming to the very beginning because it reminds them of things that they're missing out on or things that they could do further. Just like a buffet, you get to choose how much you take advantage of and how much you dive into. And sometimes a partner will, in their first year, just nibble on different things, and they'll just kind of do this little opportunity or this little opportunity. And then as the years go on and we bring some of these things back up, they say, oh, we've been doing the little stuff for a while. We're ready to go deeper. We're ready for a year-long partnership with a faculty member to do a research project, or we're ready for these bigger grants or these bigger things that we have going on. You know, just like any experience, you probably don't want to dive into the deep end yet. So if you are brand new, listen for those very kind of easy, low-hanging fruit kind of opportunities to engage in. And if you're more of a veteran, think about, as we talk about these bigger projects that you can engage in. Come on in, come on in. There are also seats over here. If anybody needs seats, there's seats over here. So we'll go ahead and get started, and you'll be able to follow along in the agenda. Again, everything should match with what you see on the screen as well as the agenda. So just a very quick overview of our office and our department. So we are one of three offices. I'm going to put all that on the screen. We are one of three offices in a department. So our department is called Experiential Learning and Career Development. So you see three offices here. Our office is the Office of Service Learning and Civic Engagement. I bring this up because sometimes people will say, I really want to get an intern. Well, we have an entire office just for internships and cooperative programs. Our office sits right alongside that office. Or if you're hiring, you're looking to hire, our office sits right alongside Career Development Services. So our three offices are working together all the time, but we're under one department. And that department does have a senior director. You'll get to meet her later this morning, Jessica Ray. So she oversees our department. But if you're looking to hire, you're going to work with Rose and her team in career development. If you're looking for interns, you're going to work with Ashley Droz and her Office of Internships. And then if you're looking for anything service learning or community engagement in general, you're going to work with myself in our office here. Any questions about that structure, though? And if you've been around a while, we have done certain sessions during these workshops with each of those other areas. So we had an hour, I think 2 workshops ago, we had an hour where Ashley came and talked all about internships, what you need in order to do an internship. And those are recorded and on our website. So at some point this morning, I will pull up our website and walk through how you can access all of that. And so that is on there, and it's been a couple of years now, but we have also done sessions with our career development services for nonprofits and government agencies like yourself who are interested in hiring our students. So one department, but 3 offices, each for different purposes so that we can serve you best. Within our office specifically, though, we do have these 4 professional positions that you see. Myself as the director, and then Kelly Bernardo over here in our blue shirt who checked you in. She's actually moving into our coordinator of service learning position. So we are really excited about that. But what that means for you is you may hear from Kelly directly as we are planning different opportunities. As we're planning different events and opportunities, she may be reaching out to you directly to get you involved with those. And then we also have a coordinator of student progress, Lisa Page. Raise your hand if you've been around a while. You've probably worked with Lisa probably at the end of semesters, because Lisa's main responsibility is to help make sure that every student graduates and completes the service learning requirements. So if you're brand new, this may be the first time that you're hearing, but FGCU is very unique in that we have a graduation requirement for all undergraduate students related to service learning. So you cannot meet, you will never meet an FGCU grad who has not engaged in their either 40 or 80 hours of service learning in order to graduate. And I say 40 or 80, it's depending on whether they entered as a first time in college student as a freshman, or if they transferred in as an upper level transfer. So maybe they did their first 2 years at FSW or somewhere, and then they transferred in as a junior. Their requirement is 40 hours. But either way, FGCU believes so much in the power of service learning, where we're truly connecting service to what they're learning in their classrooms or in their major. And they believe in that so much that they say no student will graduate from FGCU without this experience. The other massive reason, and I always point out, we are one of only 2 public institutions in the entire country that has this graduation requirement. So why do you think, and no one above us, so the Board of Governors, no one above our bubble of FGCU tells us that we have to have this requirement. So why do you think we as FGCU would say no one can graduate unless they have this experience? Why would we do that? Some students are like, oh, it's a barrier. I'm just trying to graduate. But why would we do that? With the wrong degree to, yeah. So it's a great chance to try out different majors. We have students in 2 camps usually when they come to FGCU. They're either 100% sure they know what they want to do, or they're very lost and they have no idea what they want to do. And service learning, to your point, is a great way to make sure that if you are 100% sure that you want to be an early education major, you love little kids, and you know you want to spend every single day in a kindergarten classroom, we want you to get some experience first and make sure that is in fact what you want to do. And sometimes they have those experiences and they're confirmed. And sometimes they have those experiences and say, you know what, I love little kids. I just don't want to spend every single day for the rest of my life with them. And that's okay. We just want students to get those experiences sooner rather than later to make that confirmation. And on the flip side, if a student is completely lost, we want them to maybe narrow it down to their top 2 or 3 things that they're thinking about and get some service learning experiences out in the community. So that's how it's a huge win for them. But on your end, you get to fill hopefully some needs that you have at the same time that they're exploring some things a little bit. So good point. It's a chance for them to explore a little bit. Why else might FGCU say, hey, nobody gets their degree here unless they engage in service learning? Why would we do that? That's another great reason, another great answer here. Social responsibility, teaching them that the world is bigger than just themselves, that there's a whole lot happening, and we have some responsibilities in that to play. Why else? What's another reason FGCU would say? Yeah. Yeah, it's great for the local economy and to really build a sustaining workforce here. Absolutely. There's a big main reason, and I would actually say it's become, because of a lot of emphasis from above, it's become probably our #1 reason to continue helping students engage in service learning. What is the #1 thing that employers want to see? Experience. So we are the Department of Experiential Learning, and we are an office within that department. The only way for us to make sure that students come out with some experience under their belt is this requirement. Some majors have an internship requirement that give them experience, but not all majors. So without this service learning requirement, you could absolutely graduate with 0 experience under your belt, where you read every textbook and maybe even aced every exam, but have 0 experience under your belt. This is our only way to make sure that students come out with experience. Now, on the flip side, we know that every single student graduating from FGCU has experience under their belt. We, as our office, want to make sure that experience is what is going to help them along in their career path. And so we see partners like you as co-educators in that process. We see you not just as a community agency, but somebody who is helping to educate our students. So when we have a student come out to you, we see that as an educational moment. So yes, they may be packing food for Meals on Wheels, or they may be doing any number of tasks at your agency, but as a co-educator, we do ask that you help find those connections either to their own development as a human, or more specifically to what it is that they might be majoring in or wanting to do. And so, we'll talk this morning about some intentional ways you can do that, but kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we move forward. So what is service learning? It is intentionally hyphenated. So service, filling a need in the community, learning, connecting to what it is they're doing in the classroom and what they're learning about. We tell students all the time, you can read all the textbooks that you want, but if the number one thing that employers want is experience, we want you out there engaging in the community so you get that experience. So sometimes students will say, well, and we have had this, they're learning about sustainability in a class, and they say, you know what, this elementary school, they need rain barrels. They need to collect their rainwater. It's going to be great. And we have I still distinctly remember within my first year here, talking with a partner who said, we have a bunch of rain barrels sitting in our back that we've never used. They never used them because it wasn't a need. So it's not true service learning if we're not filling true, real needs in the community. So one of the very first steps we talk about with students is this isn't volunteerism. We're not just going and doing random service. It should be something connected to what you're studying, connected to what you're exploring. It is possible, and it happens a lot, where a student is like a business major, but they're wondering and thinking about maybe being a digital media design major, where they're going to do graphics every day. And so getting some experience over there is okay, even though that's not their major, because it's something they're exploring doing. But it's service learning when it connects to their academics, it connects to the potential career paths, and at the same time fills real needs in the community. So one of the things we'll talk about in a little bit is how to work with groups from classes. And a lot of times those groups will come to you and they will say, is there something that we can do with you or for you during this semester over the next 10 to 12 weeks? And when that happens, you want to have some good ideas in place of things that you really need done. Sometimes agencies are unsure. They're like, oh, we don't have an event coming up, so there's really nothing you can help us with. We're going to talk in just a couple minutes about all the different things that a student can do for you. But my short answer to most agencies is, do you have a to-do list? Do you have anything that you've been wanting to get done over the next couple months or weeks or even days that students can help you with? There's almost always something on your to-do list. And if you're ever challenged and you're in that spot and you're like, I don't know what these students could do for me for 10 weeks, let me know. I work with this all the time, and we can absolutely take something off your to-do list and break it, even if it has to get broken into 5 different pieces and given to 5 different groups. We can have that experience where it gets something off your to-do list, and so it's filling a real need, and it's giving the students a really meaningful experience. We can also flip that scenario, and instead of waiting for students to come to you and ask that question, you can come to us, come to me, and say, hey, we have this larger need. For example, we have surveys upon surveys of our program, and they sit in a drawer, and we have no one to assess, process, analyze that data and make meaning of it. We have entire classes on campus that do that every week, every semester. And that's what they're learning how to do. We can connect you. So we can connect the dots both directions. Students looking for opportunities and trying to serve in ways that really connect with their class. And we can also take your needs and find opportunities on campus. So we're that wealth of options, that buffet that I mentioned before. And we want to make the connection the best that it possibly can be. So service learning is different than volunteerism, and it needs to fill a need in the community and connect to a student's developmental process at the same time. It's fully integrated at FGCU. I mentioned we're unique in this. It does draw students here, and we're pretty proud of that as well. But it's fully integrated through courses. We have about 270 courses every academic year that have service actually integrated into the class itself. And so that also means that we have not 270 faculty, because some of those faculty teach multiple courses, but we have a lot of faculty who are looking for partners. They're looking for agencies like you that they can partner with long-term. A faculty member loves to work with the same partner semester after semester because they know what they're getting. They can develop that relationship with you. And for you, working with a faculty member can be a really beneficial partnership because it's more sustainable, it's longer term than working with students who naturally are processing out. They're graduating, they're moving on as part of the process. So working with a course can be a really beneficial experience.
Wow, that would be interesting. Okay.
If you're able to mute the participants on there. If you do have any questions or comments in the room, certainly let me know, or questions or comments on Zoom, just put it in the chat box, and we do have people monitoring the chat box for us to bring up any of those questions. Student organizations is the second way that we have service learning fully integrated here at FGCU. So we have about 100, 150 student organizations, and those student organizations are student-led, and they get to decide where they go, what they do, but they're often very topic specific. So if you are an agency that has a specific topic, we can usually find some student organizations that would match that topic as well. When you submit, so many of you know we have a form, and we'll show it here in a little bit, but we have a form where you can submit opportunities and ask for students to come out and help in any number of ways. When you submit that form, we put it into a database, but we also shop that out to some faculty members who meet and match those topics, to student organizations who match those topics, and we do try to find you a match as best possible. Fraternities and sororities is another one. A lot of agencies think that fraternities and sororities are like this gold mine. They'll call and they'll say, do you have a fraternity who can come this weekend and move 20 tables for us? Well, we have lots of students. They don't have to be in a fraternity to be able to move tables for you. We will usually encourage you to promote that across campus, but then we do sometimes, depending on the philanthropy that those fraternities or sororities connect with, we will sometimes shop those specifically to them based on their philanthropy and the topic that you are covering. And then independently, again, we have 16,000 students. There are students all the time who just wake up and say, I want to go serve somewhere. I want to get engaged completely on their own, not as part of a class or anything else. And it's built into who they are. And you have to remember, we're now, in '97, FGC was founded. Our office came shortly after. And at that time, we were introducing college students to community engagement, to service learning, to what this concept was. Now students come to college and they have hundreds of hours under their belt. High schools require it often, or bright futures. And so students nowadays, we are not introducing this concept to. What we are introducing is the idea that at FGCU, it goes a bit deeper. So it's not volunteerism. So for example, we tell students often, if you are not studying pre-vet, you're not hoping to be a veterinarian, let's not go and clean out dog kennels for 80 hours because we want you to connect it to what you're studying. And there are people who are studying that. So same, if you're not studying sustainability or bioscience or any of the other topics, then a beach cleanup may not be the best way to fulfill your 80-hour requirement. They can certainly still do that. And that is a massive, broad opportunity for them. But we're hoping, again, to connect it as much as possible to their academics. So I mentioned before the graduation requirement. FTIC, so first time in college, and lower level transfers is 80 service learning hours, upper level transfers is 40. And we kind of talked about that why as well. And then through service learning, we're hoping that students really explore these three different areas: their passions, their major, and their career readiness skills. So we kind of talked about passion and their major as well. But the career readiness skills, is anyone familiar with the NACE career readiness skill sets? I know a couple of our veterans in the room are. Oh, where's my slide? Somewhere I have a slide. I'll pull it up here in just a minute. So we'll come back to to the NACE career readiness skills. I'm actually seeing something. It's okay. I'll pull it up here in a minute and we can kind of talk about those. But essentially, there are a large number of employers that have been surveyed, and we're talking about the top 8 skill sets that those employers have said that they're looking for. So we really try to make sure that students stay aware of how are they gaining those skill sets when they're working with you, or in the reverse, what skill sets am I missing and how do I gain those skill sets? So you'll see one of those skill sets is communication. If they have never given any sort of public talk or stood up in front of anyone and spoke before, we want to help them find some service learning opportunities where they can do that. Again, so that when they're sitting in an interview, looking for a job or trying to get into grad school, they have these experiences that we know employers are looking for. It probably goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, that the more successful our students are, the more successful FGCU is. And so all of these pieces fit together. And the reason we share it with you all is, again, we see you as co-educators. We see you as people who are nurturing and guiding our students when they're spending hours and hours with you. We have done 4.5 million hours over that now in the community since we opened our doors in '97. So those are 4.5 million hours where our students were in the community under someone else's guidance and care. That is 4.5 million hours where we want to make sure whoever is providing that guidance and care is aligned with the goals of the university and the goals for our students. So all of this may seem high level, but it really does matter as you're working with our students. We do have some frameworks. I'll dive into these here in just a minute, but I want to start. We're going to start. Yeah, we'll start with our active citizen continuum. So in just a minute, I'll pull up our website and I'll show you where you can see all of this. Again, it's also linked in the agenda, but our active citizen continuum, this is how we talk with students about the difference between volunteerism and service learning, and especially at FGCU. Is anyone familiar with the active citizen continuum? It's pretty new for most people. So it's a 4-stage continuum from left to right. So I think you got a piece of paper when you walked in, and it should have, yes. So you'll see something similar to this printed in front of you. So I want to just walk through this continuum briefly, and then I'm going to have you at your tables kind of brainstorm a little bit about where you provide opportunities for students at each of these different levels. Because again, yes, you can absolutely just engage with our students through setting up chairs or tables, but you're missing a lot of opportunity for yourself and for our students by only sticking in that stage. So I'll just walk through this real quick. It goes from left to right. I want you to hear clearly that this is not good to or bad to good. This is not, if you identify over on the left-hand side, you're bad, and if you're over here, then you're good. It's not that at all. It's levels of self-awareness. And so we use this with students all the time. It's integrated into more and more of our courses every single semester. So you'll meet more and more students who are using this in their classroom. But essentially, the member stage, as it says up there and on your page, not concerned with their role in social problems. These are people who just live in their bubble. Again, students, adults, it doesn't matter. People who just live in their bubble every single day. They don't really think about how they drive on the road or how that affects people, or what they buy at the store and how that affects the companies that you buy or don't buy from, or what you watch on TV. I tell students all the time, do you know what Netflix makes more of? Whatever you watch. They make more of whatever you watch. Everything that you do has some impact and ripple in society. And so at this role, though, we talk with students, people in the member stage are not aware of any of that. They are just living their 9-to-5 life. They're just focused on, I need to go to the store. I need to get here. Not bad, just really lacking in that awareness outside of their bubble. This stage, though, as I mentioned, most students are coming to FGCU having done something in the community, with some hours of volunteerism in the community at some point. And I think most is probably true of most adults in US society at this point. Most people have volunteered somewhere at some point, at some time. And so it says well-intentioned, but may not be well-educated about the social issues. And so this is, you think about somebody who goes for 4 hours to a food bank and they pack food and then they leave and they go home, they go about their Saturday, their weekend, and they don't really think much more about it. That experience was experienced. They had to step outside their bubble and realize somebody needs something outside of my world. And then they may have stepped right back in. And that experience doesn't necessarily teach them anything more about food issues, hunger, food insecurity or hunger issues or food deserts. They didn't walk away suddenly an expert on all of those topics because they went and packed food for 4 hours. But they did get outside their bubble and outside of their own world for a minute. And so as you progress to the right, you start to get further and further away from self and start to understand and dive into the world around you. So volunteer stage is great. This is where most of our students come to us. At FGCU, we're really focused on these next two stages of conscientious citizenship and research. Sorry, active citizenship. This slide is a little, is it correct on your side? Yeah. Okay, great. Ignore this. Hello, Matt. Conscientious citizenship is where students are starting to learn more. So maybe they spent 4 hours on a Saturday morning packing food and it sparked some curiosity. Why are there people who need food? What are the economic issues here? What are the larger, why isn't there a grocery store within walking distance? What are these bigger questions? In this stage, it's all about learning. So of course, it's a perfect match at this stage for FGCU, where they are in classes, they are learning about these topics. Sometimes though, like I mentioned, they are coming to you on their own, not as part of a class, or they're exploring something different from what they're studying. And this is a perfect opportunity for you to talk with them. You are often the expert in the topic that they are touching that morning or that afternoon when they're serving with you. So it's a great chance for you to help them start to move into the conscientious citizen stage by asking questions or by giving them information. Do you know of podcasts that they should be listening to if they are packing food wondering, hey, why are there people in the community? Bring up those questions. Depending on the age or year or maturity of our students, they may be thinking those, but not have the confidence to bring up those questions themselves. So you as the expert or you as the professional in that setting who is guiding and nurturing our student in that moment, bring up those questions for them and give them those opportunities to chew on the topic a little deeper and ask the harder questions, but also be able to point them in directions of some good resources. We have a lot of environmental science students here, especially with our beautiful brand new water school that just opened. And so a lot of students come here for water quality issues. And when we're talking about this stuff in class, that's where they gravitate toward, is some of the ecological and the environmental issues that are around. And we say, hey, as you go into this stage, there are experts on this campus that you can walk 50 feet and talk with that other people would love to be able to talk with. So who are the experts at your organizations that can really talk about this? We have a lot of students who are interested in human trafficking and sex trafficking and how they can get involved with that. And sometimes students, but also just us as humans, we jump from volunteer to what it says on your screen, active citizenship. And we jump because we have an idea, we have a solution, we have something that we think should be done. Hey, they should just build a grocery store right here, then there'd be no food desert. Hey, they should just do X, Y, or Z thing. So it's really easy for anyone, human nature, to jump from the volunteer stage, I packed food one morning for 4 hours, to a solution. I think I know the answer to this because I did this for 4 hours. So our students do it, we do it, I do it. But that conscientious citizen stage, I cannot play that up enough because that's where you learn, well, why isn't there a Publix within walking distance? Oh, there's a real reason that there's not. Or maybe companies haven't been attracted there yet. Or, all these topics and ideas and things that they need to chew on. That is what our classes are for. But when they're not connected to a class, they're coming to you and they're not connected to a class, that's where you can really either supplement the class or help provide them some opportunities. So the podcast they should be listening to, the Netflix and Hulu documentaries they should watch, these, the people in the community that they should talk to about these topics. Hey, have you ever wondered why there's not a grocery store in walking distance? You should talk to this council member. You should talk to this person. And our students will, if they're passionate about it, follow up with that, especially if they're part of a class. So that's where we start to get much further beyond that volunteer stage that most of our high school students are experiencing. Sometimes students will come to FGCU and they'll say, didn't I do this in high school? Are you asking me just to redo my high school requirement? Absolutely not. Did you take math in high school? Are you going to take math again in college? Yes. Did you take history in high school? Are you going to take history again in college? Yes. But it should be at a deeper level and more connected to what you're studying. The same is true for service and service learning. Yes, they may have done some community engagement in high school, but this should be very different. So we do often say to community partners, especially during our low points, in May, when people are graduating, they're not so focused on this. We say to community partners sometimes, that task sounds like it might be better for a high school student. Have you reached out to our local high schools? Because we really want to make sure that our students are engaging in those deeper level, more meaningful opportunities. And then the final stage is, as I mentioned before, it's correct on your paper, active citizenship. And active citizenship is where they're engaging in solutions. So they've gone through the steps. They've stepped out of being a member. They've stepped into volunteerism in some way, shape, or form. And then they've really started to think about what are the root causes here? What's the why? When we talk about root causes with students, we talk about it as like a weed. Anybody do any gardening? Do we have any gardeners in the room? You know that it feels so good when you pull that weed and you get the root and all. But if you don't, you just break off, you accidentally just break off the leaves and you know that root's still under there. What do you think to yourself? You think, next Saturday when I come out here, it's going to be right back. And the same is true. This is what we tell our students this all the time is if you're just breaking off the top of the issue, you're not getting to the root. And FGCU is a moment for them to start to explore what are the roots of these issues that we see around us. So yes, you can absolutely do a beach cleanup and fulfill your requirement, but it's not the ideal. It's not the intent and the objective of the service learning requirement here at FGCU. So if you go and do a beach cleanup and it looks great, everybody always loves a beach cleanup because you're on the beach all morning with your friends. It looks great on Instagram. You always have that iconic at the end of your experience. Everyone lines up with the 10 bags of trash and we all take a picture. We all post it on Instagram. Had a great morning cleaning up Barefoot Beach. Isn't this great? But you come back next Saturday and what are you going to find? More trash. So we didn't get to the root. It's how we tell students. One of the ways we can help students understand whether they are addressing the root or not. When you come back a week later, you come back a month later, you come back a year later, is it back? Or is it just the same as how you found it then? And so that really pushes students, and it should push you as well as you work with our students to think about how can we get students, how can we use their energy? We have transitioned to telling students, you may be better spending 4 hours instead of cleaning up a beach for 4 hours on a Saturday morning, spend 4 hours educating people as they walk from the parking lot to the beach on, sometimes students will say, especially the very passionate environmental science students, they'll say, people should just know that when you throw something into the water, it doesn't disintegrate. It ends up in a fish or it ends up somewhere, and they should just know. And so we say, how do they know? Unless somebody tells them, how do they know? And so we do have students who, instead of spending 4 hours cleaning up the beach, they will set up a table in the parking lot of the beach parking lot, and they will teach people as they're dragging all their stuff down to the sand and tell them, hey, just so you know, if you throw something on the sand, it doesn't disintegrate, it doesn't go away. And so that is one way that they start to ask the questions and then take action. And so that active citizen stage is all about the taking action. So you learned about those root issues and then you took action. So what I want to do now is have you start to brainstorm and think a little bit. So if you turn over that same piece of paper that's in front of you, it should match what you see up here on the screen. I want you just for a couple minutes at your table, or if you came with somebody else, to brainstorm in each of these areas. Brainstorm, as it says up here, how does or how can your organization engage students in each stage of the active citizen continuum? So how does your organization currently engage students in traditional volunteer roles? how do you, or how could you engage students in that conscientious citizen stage where you're helping students learn about the issues that you touch, or pointing them to resources? Is it your website? Is it experts on hand right there at your organization? And then finally, at the end, how do you provide assistance to students to develop their own created solutions? So when I say their own created solutions, that's what I just mentioned, where students came up with, hey, we're just going to table in the parking lot, or we're going to stand there and talk to people as they come in the beach parking lot. That's a solution. So how does your agency help in that regard as well? So take just a couple minutes and then share at your table once you're comfortable, and then we're going to share out here collectively. So go ahead and brainstorm as much as you can on your own or with your partner, and then your table, and then I'll tell you when we're going to share out as a group.
I don't think anyone would talk about that, even during the panel. It's not a problem.
All right, I'd love to maybe just get us started. So feel free to keep writing things down, and I think you'll probably have more ideas as we share out here. But in the volunteer stage, what are just some basic ideas, some things that you're already doing in the volunteer stage? You can just shout them out. Anybody? Pulling weeds, great. Fundraising, great. Working a registration table, road cleanup, chopping onions. Get those onions. Answering phones, excellent. Social media platforms, yeah, excellent. So let's jump down to what we just kind of were learning about, the conscientious citizen stage. What are you doing or could you be doing in this stage with students where it's all about learning? What's that?
Invasive weeds or.
Yeah, learning about invasive plants, invasive weeds, how to remove them, all that. Yeah. Absolutely. If that's what you work in, if you work in conservation, you are the expert. Tell them everything. Yeah. Housing what? Housing counseling classes. Yeah. So what do people need to do? And what does that look like for someone to get a house from Habitat? Yeah. Monitoring mental health policies. That's really good. That's really good, especially if students are interested in that. It's not a side that they often think about. Yeah. Hosting a podcast on a specific topic, which is great because it does great service for you, but it also forces them to learn and teach and research a little bit in order to do that podcast. And we'll talk here in a minute about some fundraising and how, or I should say in a little bit, we'll talk about fundraising. And one of the things that we love about fundraising is students rarely can just fundraise without also educating others about you. So if you say, you know, this group of students, can you raise $200 for us by April? It's rare that they can ask anyone for money without also telling them what you do, why you do it, why they should care. All of those extra pieces. Yeah, that's great. Anything else in conscientious citizenship? This is also where if you have in-house experts or you have connections to in-house experts, you can help our students learn so much through those connections in the community or even nationally. Yeah, Jenna.
Rescue some food plants, grants, exploration days, the level of how exploration days work with what can be given out and how food rescue actually works.
Yeah, the more you can teach our students while they're with you about all of the nuances around your, and sometimes students think that these issues are just black and white, very straightforward. Someone needs food. Why aren't we just giving them food? Hey, let's talk about all these other subtopics in here.
Are you doing a research by drafting a survey?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because they're going to be learning, they're going to need to research and find out a lot about that topic. Absolutely, absolutely.
Setting up boundaries for regarding mental health to understand, what questions can be asked.
Yeah.
Self, you're asking lots of questions about what can be and should be.
Absolutely. And then finally, under active citizenship, how can you help students tackle these deeper root level project ideas that they have? And they do have ideas, I'll tell you. They have great ideas. Yeah. Excellent. So students developing a mental health toolkit. Excellent, excellent.
We have some interns that actually been in our schools for a while, saw some needs and have actually developed programming and are running the programming at the schools, filling a need that they saw. Full circle.
Yeah, that's a great example where students see the need, they develop the solution, and they implement it all with the same partner, which doesn't get to happen a lot. So the more you can do that, the better. Oh, great. Excellent. And yeah.
On Crew Land site, we have 70,000 acres, so it's a venue for students to come in and actively engage sometimes in either the research they develop or the program they put together on their own and teach people to engage them in the environment, hopefully inspire somebody to care about it or not, whatever their passion is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that advocacy piece, that teaching others, can absolutely be a level of active citizenship where they are out there addressing the root of the issue by teaching people that the issue exists and how to solve it. Excellent. Excellent. So as you think of other things, feel free to continue adding to the notes in front of you. But another piece that I want to touch on is the other page that you were handed or that is stapled to that. And it's on the 4 types of service. So as we're talking about these different categories of service, it should hopefully get you brainstorming some things. But this is one area that you'll really want to brainstorm a lot around. And so I'm going to walk through them, but then I'm also going to have you take some notes on the flip side of that page on where you think that your organization is providing opportunities in each of these 4 categories. So direct service. Direct service is literally interacting with, and I think I've got it. Yeah, Direct service is literally interacting with either, as it says on your page, the persons, the places, the animals, or the things that we want to impact. So if you are intending to feed someone who's hungry, you are literally handing food to someone who's hungry. That's direct service. Whereas indirect service might be helping, as was mentioned, with the phone calls, the volunteer coordination, the emails, the social media platforms, a lot of the administrative stuff that has to happen in order to hand food to someone who's hungry. So the handing food to someone who's hungry is the direct service. All of that other stuff that makes the organization run, that students can absolutely still help with, that's indirect service. So as you see under indirect service, that does not take place in the presence of the persons, places, animals, or things that we want to impact. And so I think your printed version mirrors what's up here with some examples. So under indirect, an example is assisting a nonprofit or government agency with their communication or administration needs is indirect service. So indirect and direct is probably what most of our partners think of. That's, I need help setting up chairs for our gala on Saturday. That's indirect service. And again, nothing wrong with it, but if you're looking at the buffet, you might be missing some really great pieces of that buffet. And then over here is advocacy and research. And these are the two big aha moments that usually a lot of our partners have at some point within their first year or so of working with us, or specific individuals might have when working with us. And this is much broader. So advocacy, service that requires you to raise awareness, educate, or work for or against an issue or solution. So advocacy can be education, where you are just educating people. Like I talked about the beach parking lot example, that's advocacy, where you're educating someone about the issue, that trash put into the water doesn't just disappear. But it can also be working toward or against, or for or against an issue, which is sometimes legislation, it's sometimes a policy, it can be any number of things. And I don't think anyone's here from Sierra Club. Is anyone here from Sierra Club? They did some amazing work with our students and engaged our students through that form of advocacy during COVID. A lot of our students obviously couldn't travel or be in person, and they were able to engage with our students through a lot of different classes and teach them how to advocate and how to prevent things from happening that are about to happen in the community, or the reverse, make something happen that needs to happen. And they did some really cool projects with our students and taught them how to talk to elected officials and be effective, and taught them how to put on protests in a peaceful way, and what does that look like. And they taught that, again, they're the experts in that moment. They were the experts kind of nurturing our students in how to do these things. But for them, it was a massive need. They needed people. They needed an army of people to go out and do things to help prevent certain things from passing in legislation and so forth. So it doesn't need to be legislation, it can just be education. It can just be, and this is where if a partner, if one of you ever come to me and you say, I don't really know what students could do under advocacy for me, I will always ask this question. Do 100% of people in Southwest Florida know that your organization exists and know why your organization exists? The answer is probably no, that 100% of people do not know that you exist and know why you exist. And if the answer is no, then there is work that our students can do for you. They can put together campaigns, they can put together social media campaigns, they can do flyers, they can do all these things, but they can also go out and give presentations. Again, during COVID, we had a couple organizations that trained our students to put together Zoom workshops to do trainings for retirees who were at home, and all the different populations that were at home, including teachers and law enforcement officers and different individuals who, I know the one organization I'm thinking of was specifically focused on human trafficking. And so they taught our students the signs and things to look for around human trafficking. Our students put together a Zoom presentation that they did over and over and over for that organization. So the organization trained them once for about 4 hours, which is a good chunk of time, and had them practice the presentation. Then our students advertised and set up these presentations with churches and schools and different areas during COVID while everyone was going to lock down. And they did that presentation over and over. So it filled a massive need for the organization. It was all advocacy. It was all raising education and awareness around the topic of human trafficking. And it was a huge skill builder for our students. So now those students who did that, they can sit in an interview and say, I created a presentation, implemented it across our community during COVID, and educated over 200 people on the signs and things to look for around human trafficking. I mean, that's a pretty big thing to be able to talk about during a job interview. So win-win-win across the board, but advocacy can really help you so much. And so really think about the ways that our students can engage with you there. Research is another key element that our partners sometimes miss. It sounds hard, and I don't want it to sound hard to you. Think about the data that you either need to collect that would be really helpful for your organization, or the data that you have that you don't yet know how to use. So if you have, like I said earlier, if you have surveys and surveys from people who've come through your programs, but you don't know the data from those surveys, they're just sitting in a drawer somewhere, and you don't have the time or you don't have the know-how to do that, we have students who can do that. We can partner you with faculty for that. And so that can be one form of research. Yeah, so the other part of research is the collection. And so it's separate classes and separate objectives for those classes, but absolutely, they can help create the surveys, make sure that they are statistically sound and that they're going to get you the results that you want. It's a huge learning moment for our students. A faculty member can guide that process and make sure that you're getting what you want at the end. I will say probably multiple times this morning that each opportunity when you're engaging with students has a different onboarding process and a different length of service, more or less. And so if you're just looking for students for a Saturday to set up chairs, that's going to be a much quicker turnaround. We might need 2 weeks to start promoting it at bare minimum to try to get that out across campus. Students will say, yes, I'm interested, I'll come help on Saturday. That's a pretty quick snapshot moment. Whereas if you want a research project, we're going to be looking for a semester or two to find the right faculty member teaching the right course with the right topics, and have that faculty member work with you, make sure you get the objectives met that you want. It may be another semester before they actually can do it, and then a semester before you can get your results. So it's more of a year or two-year long process. But if you get onboarded with that faculty member, now that faculty member can work in every year. Let's say you do the same surveys every year, you need the same reports every year for annual reporting purposes or grants or something. Now that faculty member has a partnership with you. So it is a very different experience to do something like research with a faculty member than, hey, I need 20 people this Saturday. Other questions or thoughts? Yeah.
Should be coordinated with your office, correct?
Yeah, in specific research moments, we'll actually bring in our Office of Research and Scholarly Innovation, and they may assist depending on, so if it's like lab research, anyone here from mosquito control? I know they're often here. We have done a lot of really great lab research assistance with mosquito control here in Lee County. And so that's an example where I can be your starting point, but I'll eventually get you connected to another office. Other questions about research or advocacy? Okay, so I want you to turn your page over, and you should see this. And just like you did before, I want you to brainstorm, how are you currently, or could you be engaging students in each of these different 4 types of service? In the microphone behind you. All right, if you're still writing, feel free to keep writing, but I do want to start to hear what you have going on here. So let's actually jump down to advocacy. Who's got some advocacy things either happening or ideas for what could happen? Go ahead.
I actually, that has been a very hard part for me to get students engaged in by doing it on my own. But I recently, I run a girl and young women empowerment non-for-profit, Gemstones in the Making, and there was a student, a male student that reached out and said, well, how can I help advance your cause? And I gave him a couple of projects, and one of the projects were, well, how about, developing a concept where you create like a forum where you invite students, and kind of have a conversation about why empowering women is important and why does it make sense, and how can men also engage in that gender equality fight and be advocates. And so I sent him that, and I think he thought the project was going to take too long. But yeah, that's kind of, that would follow your advocacy, right?
Absolutely, that's a great advocacy project to have students kind of gather conversation groups together, have discussion, have dialogue about that. Absolutely. One of the things, and so it brings up a best practice, is to ask the students outright, if they don't share initially how long they're looking to work with you, ask them. They may, so most of our classes are looking for anywhere from 8 to 10 or 12 week long projects, especially if you come across a Foundations of Civic Engagement class. They're usually about a 12-week project with you. So we've moved away from that because we've moved away from saying you need to fulfill this number of hours, because our partners have said that it's really difficult to work around a set number of hours. And we've moved instead toward objectives, where you and the student or the group of students should set one or more objectives to say, by the time we're done, so if they say, I've got 4 weeks with you, or 8 weeks, or 12 weeks, by the time we're done, we should have this objective met, which maybe have one discussion group, at some point over the next semester, or whatever the objective is that you want to give them. But really making sure from the very beginning that you know how much time or how long they have with you. If it is a group, I think your project, if it's a 8 to 12 week group from class, that project would be perfect, because they could maybe do a discussion group in February, one in March, and then wrap up with you in April and tell you some great results. And maybe there's a survey they develop as part of that.
If it's subjective driven for that period of 8 to 12 weeks, what would be a fair amount of hours to award for that?
So students will ask the same thing, like, how many do I have to do? How many do I have to do? And we say, don't focus on the number. It's really meeting the objective. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why. So if it's a group of 4 students from class, and you say the objective is to have one discussion group, like put together a discussion group in March and put together one in April, and your objective is to have it and to survey the students before and after and tell me the results. If that's the objective, then you may have one student who spends 3 hours putting together the survey. Another student may spend 8 hours making the flyers and hanging up all the flyers around campus. And another student may only spend 1 or 2 hours actually facilitating the discussion. They've all done really great work, and as a group, they've achieved your objectives, but they each did different number of hours, which is totally fine. The important thing for us is that they're learning in the process and that they're meeting your true needs, that it's something you really do need done. Yeah, depending on the faculty member, most faculty members have a log, just like they would, and we tell them it's like a job where when you come to work, you clock in, you clock out, especially a lot of people are working remotely now, and if they're clocking in and clocking out in a remote fashion. Same here. So if they're working on a flyer for you at 10 o'clock at night, they would log, March 15th, 10 p.m. to 10:30, I worked for a half hour on this flyer. And then the next day they might work on that flyer again and so forth, and they'll keep a running log of all their hours. So most faculty are now using that, but not all. So you may still have some faculty who aren't giving that tool or that resource to students. We have it on our website, but students have to know that it's there to use it.
So if they meet an objective, do you give them the credit? So let's say they're coming in with 40 hours.
Mhm.
And they're keeping a log, so do you have to, the employer, prove or say, yes, they did approximately those hours? Is that how?
That is a great question.
To the employer?
Yeah, great question. So you as the community partner, because you're not employing them, so we only use the word employer for internships or if it's paid or for careers. But as a community agency, community partner with our students, you should have some verification on your side of how many hours they've done. For most partners, that is asking them and making sure that they're using a tracking sheet of some kind, so that if they're making a flyer for you or making a couple flyers, that they're able to hand you a tracking sheet that says all the times they worked on it. At the end of their experience with you, they will track their hours in a system we have on campus called Eagle Service Network. And so those hours get tracked. You will actually, as the community partner, you will get 2 emails. And I see heads shaking yes, because many of you have been through the process. But when a student works with you, they create a form in Eagle Service Network that says, I am going to work with Community Cooperative this semester. You will get an email at that moment that says, John Smith says he's going to work with you. Then when that student tracks their number of hours, they go back into that form, and now they've completed their experience with you. They'll say, I did 18 hours with Community Cooperative. So then you'll get another email that says, John Smith says he did 18 hours. Is this accurate? All you have to do is click yes or no. There's no login, there's no anything. It will come to your email as long as the student enters. So the student enters the email that it needs to go to. So sometimes agencies will contact us and say, hey, can you make sure that all of the verification emails come to this other email address because somebody left or something? We don't control that. That is controlled by what the student enters into the form. So make sure also that when you're working with students, maybe that first meeting with students, when you're setting objectives, also talk about those pieces and parts of, hey, when you enter this into Eagle Service Network, make sure you're sending it to this email address, and here's my phone number and those sorts of things.
This is something that happened last year. I guess there was a student that I had no record that had worked within my organization, but did send in a total of 40 hours. How do you handle that? I mean, what's the best way to?
Yeah.
Say no.
Yeah, I mean, truly, if you have no record of it, what happens sometimes, and so this is where we ask that you do a little research as much as possible within your organization, but we do have sometimes that they were taking a class maybe with a faculty member who had a partnership that wasn't with you as the volunteer coordinator, or maybe it was they were taking a science class and they had a partnership directly with some lab person in your organization or something. So just kind of making sure, asking around, making sure that all forms have been checked, everything's checked, and there's really truly no record of them, then yeah, it would just be a click no, this isn't true, I have no record of this. We do, yeah, go ahead.
They get married or if they have a client named up their picture, your name matches their name.
And the burden of proof is on the student at the end of the day. We tell them that from the very beginning. And we do ask students to track hours each semester, because we tell them, hey, people change jobs all the time. And the person you worked under this semester may not be there when you go to graduate in 3 years. So we do you know, we don't want, if that student truly did serve 40 hours with you, we want to give them that credit, if you will, but,
Good questions. When, so although it's objective based, they still have the 80 hours or whatever requirement
Mhm.
still. So it's still hours based as well.
Yeah, so it is, that's a good point. It's a combination of objectives and hours. The hours are so that we can make sure that they completed what the university is requiring, but the objective is as a result of our community agencies really asking, hey, we don't want students coming to us and saying, this class is telling me to do 10 hours. And so it is most important to set an objective, but just like you have objectives at work, but you know how many hours you spend at work. The same is true here, where that student may do 12 hours meeting your objective. They just need to be tracking that toward their final total. It's really not, you're going to verify that for them in some way, shape, or form to make sure that they, in fact, are doing the number of hours. And so sometimes people will say, well, I don't know how long they spent working on a flyer. Ask them for their log, their log of hours, what date and times were they working on this. And if it seems reasonable, use your judgment. If they say they worked on one flyer for 40 hours, I would call that into question.
Graduation requirement.
And the second thing is, since we've been doing internships and not so much service learning yet, could there be a combination of an intern utilizing the agency for service learning as well, as long as it's a different project and counted differently than what their internship is?
Yeah, that's another great question. You guys have great questions. So yes, you can absolutely, as a student, you can engage in with the same organization for your internship and for your service learning requirement, as long as that agency, that organization is a nonprofit or government agency. So a student couldn't do service learning, they cannot do service learning with a for-profit. But if they are maybe a social work intern and they're working in the schools or they're working with a different nonprofit, they could do their internship for social work and complete their internship. Once it is complete, then they can begin their hours toward their service learning experience, or vice versa. They cannot double dip with the same hours. They do have to be two complete separate experiences. I think Myrtle, you, and then we'll jump up here. They didn't actually complete service with you in any way, they didn't fill a need, then no. So if I would probably equate this to training. So we do have quite a few organizations who the students have to get trained in order to be able to do what they do. So a crisis hotline is a really good example where it's a lot of hours. I don't know if anyone knows the number. I remember it's a lot of hours that a student, any volunteer, has to go through training to work the crisis hotlines. And then they can begin serving. And so we've had that same question in scenarios like that of, hey, do the 40 hours of training also tack on to the number of hours? The answer is when they reach the number of training hours, then they can start tacking those on. So if it's 40 hours of training, they would need 40 hours of service to count all of those trainings. So if it's 2 hours of training, they need to at least serve for 2 hours in order to count the training hours. Because we did have agencies say, we had students get 36 hours of training and they never came back. So I'm not, and they would say to us, I'm not comfortable verifying saying a student did 36 hours of service when really all they did was soak in knowledge from us and then they left. And we agree, you know, if they're not filling a need for you, they're not, as we define service learning, then it's not service. So however long you're training and working with them, then you would just, if it's 4 hours, then once they've reached 4 hours of service with you, they could count those hours. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And the chat can't hear the question, so can you just?
Oh,
repeat
yes,
them?
sorry. Yes. And I can also pass around a microphone if need be. Yes. I'm sorry. So sorry. I'll come back, Pearl.
I apologize, but for coming to agreement on what the objectives are, is there a certain form or document that those need to put into, and then also if it's just like a one-off task, like coming to take pictures at the event, do we need to set up this for that person?
Yeah, so the question's about setting objectives, and is there a form to set objectives, and do you need objectives for short-term opportunities? With the second question, you don't need objectives for short-term opportunities because usually the objective is clear. We need, and what I would say is maybe just setting what you want the final result to be. I need 100 photos cleaned up, edited, and in this format on a thumb drive. You want it in a cloud. What does that look like? As far as a form goes, one of the key things to understand about service learning at FGCU is that because it is integrated and lived out through all those different ways, through student organizations, through classes, through everything, you will get students in many different forms and fashions coming to you. And so sometimes they're coming to you from a class where the instructor is very proficient in service learning integration, and they have been doing it for years, and they will give their students a form to come to you with, and it's all spelled out. Those are gold mines. You're like, oh, and I can tell you several professors that if you want that experience, you want to work with those professors. And then other times students are coming from classes where the professors are, I don't mean this negatively, but they're borrowed from another department. So they're told to go teach this class, and they're not as proficient in how do our students work with community partners. And we try to train them, but there's a lot of challenges with different pieces of things. And so sometimes you'll get students coming from a class where they don't have all the resources that I was just explaining before, and they might be a little lost. And then sometimes you have students coming to you from a fraternity or sorority, and they're just really excited and they just want to do something and they don't really care what they do. And so you get all sorts of different things. One of the purposes of this is to tell you what resources exist so that, and some best practices, so that if they're not walking up to you with a sheet or they're not talking about objectives, that you can bring that up and say, hey, we have not talked about objectives yet, or what I want the final result to be. I just want to be real clear. The more things, and we tell our students this as well, the more things you can put in writing, follow-up emails where it says, hey, had a great Zoom call with you, talked about photography at the next 2 Saturdays events. Just want to remind you, here's the format I want all the photos in. Here, you can be as specific as possible, but following that up so that it's in writing. And we also really encourage, if it's part of a class, to always copy the instructor. They love that because it gives them some insight on what's going on, and it allows them to help if the student later comes back and is telling their professor like, oh, I gave them 500 images and they weren't happy with that. Well, the whole story might be that they gave you 500 images that weren't edited, they weren't refined, they weren't how you wanted them to be. And so the more you can loop in the professor, the better. Pearl, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay, it's just at my age, I might forget it. My first question would be, I'm with the Asian Professional Association with my peers, Frank and Monterey, and we had our flagship event, which is the 19th annual Asian Fest in February, and we had like 9 volunteers from FGCU. Now, 4 of them already had the validation, the confirmation email, and it gave us an opportunity for the comments to actually thank them and appreciate them for how well they did. Now, with the rest, is there any way we can actually write a letter and send it wherein it'll actually be counted? Because it's like you've mentioned earlier, we do change, our board members shift around. So when they start calling in, maybe 6 months down the road, it might not be the same person.
Yeah.
So is it possible to do that so that we have we can put it in writing that we appreciated them and thanked them, and all the details and information is there?
Yeah, so good question. The question is is there a way to put into writing voluntarily to our office to tell us which students came, and to be able to record it even before the students may track that? Because you're right, the students may have had that experience with you, but maybe they don't track it for 3 years. So two best practices here. One is to make sure that you always have your own tracking system. So you know, if I worked with a student this semester, that there's a file to go back to. There's some record somewhere, preferably in a shared folder or drive with other people at your organization, so that if Joe Smith calls you in 3 years and says, hey, I'm trying to graduate, I know I did 10 hours with you 3 years ago, that you do have something to look back to, if at all possible. So that's the first best practice. The other is, yes, we sometimes, we're going to be doing it more and more, but we send surveys to our agencies that have posted opportunities in our database. And so we'll send a survey that says, did someone come? Did this get fulfilled? How was that experience? We'll ask you some questions. One of those questions is, who came? What that allows us to do is to look in the system and see, if you say 8 people came, and we look at those 8 people and only 4 of them actually track their hours in Eagle Service Network, we can follow up with those other 4 to say, we know you did this really great experience. We want you to have credit for it toward your graduation requirement. So if you get a survey, fill out the survey. If you don't, you can always just send me an email. The more information you can send me, the better we all are, because I'll keep that in our files and make sure we have that when the student goes to graduate.
When we do a request, I mean, we've been partnering with FGCU since 2018. When they're giving out events, and they're great. They're priceless. Now, with this new system that we've been receiving, inquiring or requesting. Now, if we have something in mind specifically, let's say as an example, photography, social media promotion or anything like that. Now, do we do that separately? Do we do it specific, or and we actually specify that how I'm running?
Yeah, and I'm going to pull up on the computer here. So the question is, do we submit forms separately for different needs? And the short answer is yes. That's always your best opportunity. So this is our website, and students use these 2 buttons the most. This button here, Find Service Learning Opportunities. When you fill out the form to request students to come and do something for you, it gets processed by our team and put into this area. So students see this, and they can scroll, kind of aimlessly scroll, or they can search here keywords. So if I, early education major, I can type in kids and I can see what I could do that would work with kids. You can see right now we have 149 opportunities. This changes daily, but it is really important that whatever opportunities you have, you put in here, or else our students don't know about it. And secondly, I do recommend that you fill out the form once for each different unique opportunity that you have, because it allows us to put in more of those keywords. So if you need a photographer for some events, and then you also need someone to come and tutor kids, and then you also need someone to help put together an event and help plan an event, which PS, we have an event planning major on campus. So I think most people, most people always need event help. And I'm like, we have people who want to do that. We have students who want to do that for the rest of their lives here. So the more things you can individually post, if I'm a student and I'm used to just scrolling, because they're usually accessing this on their phone and they're just scrolling, just like we do on Instagram or anything else, they're going to see your organization pop up a lot. If all of your opportunities are in one, they're only going to see you once. And we know the more they see you, the more likely they are to engage with you. So the more unique opportunities you can put in there, the better. Yes.
Are not able to match with the service looking for a specific project, what we do at community to better position the student. But on the flip side, now seeing that there's 129 opportunities specifically under kids, maybe it's where that you find that there's opportunities that the community we're posting that are not being fulfilled because there's not an interest or an opportunity for the student. So which is there one great focus in that area?
So yes, good question. So the question is about matching. How do we best make sure that the needs are filled, and how do we best make sure that students are able to find what they're looking for? We don't have a good system for that, unfortunately. There are systems that would allow us to do that, but they are expensive and we don't have the money for it. So what I was just showing you is basically an electronic bulletin board. And every bulletin board posting says, if you're interested, contact Pearl. If you're interested, contact now Brooke. Whatever it is, it says contact. So we don't know unless you tell us. We don't know if the students have in fact connected with you and if your need has been filled. So that will remain active until the end date that you entered. So, certainly tell us if it's no longer something you want live, but we don't have good data unless you report that back to us. We had, and that's part of what that survey is that I mentioned before. We've had some transition in our own team, and that survey hasn't been used as much lately. But moving forward, and how it was a couple years back, if you post something in there, we will send you a survey, and we will ask those questions of did this get fully need, who came, how many people, all of that. And that is a way for us to know, but it's reliant on all of you responding, which no shame at all, because I get hundreds of emails daily as well. We don't get a full response from those surveys. We never did. So we're lacking on that side. And then on the student side, we don't know unless a student comes to us that they're even looking for something. Again, 16,000 students, we just have no way to know. There is a platform that I would love to buy. So if anybody has $40,000 a year, please come see me. Yeah, Myrtle.
Do I need to establish the business? Each of those, so for example, already or the Alex thing is going on, and there's a way for me to tie in these opportunities for students. Do I need to set up new organizations for the radio, one for television, one for the drive, and or do I just post all the opportunities under this organizations around?
Good question. So the question is about if you have multiple organizations, do you need to set them up separately? The short answer is yes. So I'm going to take you back to our homepage for a second. So when you're on our homepage, again, the 4 buttons at the top are what students use the most. So where it says find a community partner. So I showed you before, I showed you this button, find service learning opportunities. This button is find a community partner. This is when students are just looking to connect with an agency, and they're not really sure yet what they want to do with that agency, but they know that they want to connect with that agency, maybe for a class project or a longer term project. And so same thing in here, you could type in kids and see what comes up. But you can also search by different topics like the county, the category that you might cover, the sustainable development goal, and so forth. Or students also love to be able to see where they would have to drive to and those sorts of things. So they can search in a lot of different fashions. You would need to have each organization in here because this runs off of, essentially it's checked against the IRS database. So every organization has to be registered with the IRS as a nonprofit or government agency. So each agency would need to be in here before you can submit anything into the other database. So before you can submit specific opportunities, you do need to be listed in the database. Matthew.
Service opportunities offered through summer semesters or internship session?
Yeah, that's a great question. What times of year can you engage with students through service? All times of year. And so a lot of people don't know that we are still very busy in the summer. We have a lot of classes. We have students who live on campus June, July, and into early August. So there's a lot happening. Yes, it's not the full 16,000 students in the summer, but it's absolutely still a really great time to engage students. The only bad times are the week right after graduation in May, like the week of graduation, well, I should say finals week and the week of graduation. So like end of April, very beginning of May is a pretty bad time to try to engage with students. And then the very beginning of August is always a pretty bad time because of the transitions happening on campus. But even winter break, a lot of students stick around until like the day they need to go home to see their family. And so they're looking for opportunities even during winter break.
Add to that, all through the summer, even if they're not taking courses, they can get their hours in all summer long, every break that they're on. So if they don't have to be actively in this class to do their hours, they're still students until they graduate. So whenever they're on a break, they're looking to fill their hours.
Good point.
Thank you.
Yeah, so online, I know you may not have heard that, but students can fill their hours all year round. They don't have to be in a class in order to fill their hours. Frank,
So I'm tracking, back to Pearl's point, can we, I assume that's what students do, right? Track the hours.
yeah, so the
That Joe Smith did a see hours was.
yeah, the track your hours button is for students only. It makes you sign in as a student. So no one, in fact, we get this with fraternities and sororities a lot where I don't know if you know this, but fraternities and sororities usually have a service chair. One student is in charge of the service of that organization. And so a lot of times that person wants to track like everyone's service for them because they already have to keep a sheet of it. Or in your case, you already are keeping records. Can I just track this for the student? Unfortunately, because it's a graduation requirement, it is behind a single sign-on. The student has to sign in to their profile with the university and track that to make sure that it is fully accurate, the student submitted it, and that everything is audited for graduation purposes. So you can't do anything for the student. However, you can after, and this is a really good best practice that I know some of you already do, but after you engage with a student through service, a follow-up email to do two things. One, well, three things really, to build relationship with them, share pictures and have, hey, it was so great to see you last Saturday. That builds a relationship with them and they're more likely to come back to you. But also it's a chance for you to remind them to track their hours. And you can even point them to our homepage, that button right there that says track your hours. If they're unsure of how to do it, everything is spelled out in that button, behind that button. And so telling them, and some partners do this already, and I do recommend giving them a deadline. So a lot of partners in that follow-up email will say, so great having you, make sure you track your hours and make sure you track your hours before December 1st, because after December 1st, we can't guarantee that we'll still be able to verify those.
After they start with us, we have to still give them.
You absolutely can, and it helps to kind of encourage them to do it now. It keeps it easier on you, so 3 years don't pass and you're trying to remember somebody and did this person come or not. What sometimes will happen, I mentioned Lisa Page, our coordinator of student progress. Sometimes Lisa will call you 3 years later and say, hey, I'm really trying to help John Smith here get graduated. Like, can you help me out? Can you look through your records? Can you see? So you may still get that call from our office, from mainly Lisa, but giving them giving them a deadline to track their hours is not a bad thing at all. Yeah, one more question, and then we'll take a little break because I know we're getting need bathroom time and snacks and all that. Go ahead.
And when they sent through their emails, like here's how many hours, yes and no, I put the no just simply because they had underestimated their hours according to what I had. So I counted the time they got there and all the learning that we did and all the talking that we did about where would you best serve, what's going on, and then talk to them about how to do it and actually doing the program itself. So they would say that 3 hours, and I'm like, you can say. So I said no, because, and I put in notes, maybe it's wrong, and I think I will help me out with that, because it was like, they're all going, oh my God, they're not taking class hours, and I thought, well, because you put your notes in. So I had that reverse thing happen. I don't know how to change that or just be different, but they all underestimated their hours every month.
Yeah, and Kelly, I'm going to ask you what you prefer in that scenario. Did you hear the scenario?
Just in the comment section, put how many hours they actually put, and then the students will reach out to us and be like, these are just see what you put, and I can change it manually.
Yeah, that's what I think happened with those two. I think I gave them a
So if you're online, the question was about when students track under the number of hours that they actually did. And Kelly was just saying that you can go ahead and click no, that number is not accurate, but in the comment section, put what the correct number of hours should be, and Kelly can correct it on the backside. All right, one last question. Yeah. Oh, good practice. Yeah, so certainly email the student. And really that is a big message overall, is stay in touch with the student even after they serve with you, because you want them to come back. You want them to know your organization. That is where sometimes agencies will come and say, hey, I see this other agency is getting students all the time and we're not. It's that follow-up piece. It's the building the relationship. It's meeting with the president of the student organization and saying, how can we work together more? Like build a relationship with them while they're here, and they talk to each other. When they're in classes and they start at the beginning of a semester and the faculty member says, you're gonna need to do a project with a community partner, they turn to each other and say, where have you gone before? What service have you done? Did you do MAD or Make a Difference Day, our day of service? And they'll say, oh yeah, I was there. I was only there for 4 hours, but it was great. Let's go back there. So really, the more touch points you have with a student, either email or in person, the better you are. So let's take a little, maybe say 5-minute break, and we'll come back and kind of move into our next section. What's that?
You know what the table does?
Oh, I need to see something first. All right. We're gonna go ahead and pull back together here for our next little section. And if you have remaining questions, don't worry. After this panel and our next little session, we'll circle back at the end and make sure that every question gets answered and that you get all the information you need. So we'll let everybody come on back in. So for our next section, we're going to be talking about class projects, specifically for class projects. Raise your hand if you have ever worked with a class group before, a group from class. So I see a few here. If you have, you know that it can be a really great experience because you're getting to work with the same group over, like I said, it can be 8, 10, 12 weeks. And then on the flip side, there can be some challenges around working with class groups as well. And like I mentioned, every faculty member is at a different level of proficiency when it comes to integrating service learning into their classes. And so it can look a little different as well. Your gold mine is getting a faculty member who has been doing it a long time and has the resources built out for their students, and their students are walking up to you with templates and they're emailing you very professionally and they're following up with you each week and they're doing all those things. But you might not have a faculty member who is that proficient and is guiding the students that way. And so you'll get a wide array of things. But I do hear questions sometimes from community partners that say, hey, the student just ghosted me. I haven't heard from them in 3 weeks and I thought we were good to go and I thought we were working on something. And so I want you to hear the student perspective as well. So Sydney is here. Unfortunately, Abraham is sick today and is not able to be with us. So Sydney's going to be our student rep to talk about some of these questions that we're going to go through. And then Roberto Garcia is a faculty member here and teaches a couple of the courses that have service learning integrated into them. So you're going to get to hear the faculty perspective, the student perspective, and of course, we want to hear your own questions. We're going to start with some questions up here, and we'll just take it from there. So welcome, Sydney and Roberto. So go ahead and introduce yourself, and then also if you can share an example of a project that you've done where you connected with a community partner for that project. And so for Roberto, any project that stands out for you from your classes, and Sydney, anything that you've done. So Sydney, why don't you start?
Hi, my name is a sophomore.
Oh.
Okay, good. Hi, my name is Sydney. I'm a sophomore and my major is psychology. So last year I took a course on foundations of civic engagement. And through that course, we had to develop a community partnership. And when I went to the service learning fair, I looked at many different organizations. And one that stood out to me the most was Grace Place. And they just communicated very well with me. They seemed very interested in me as well as I was interested in them. And they constantly had great communication. And yeah.
And would you say communication was that piece that you were like, I want to work with them?
Yes. So as students, I think students can ghost organizations, but I was also ghosted with an organization as well. So and some organizations that I did reach out to either didn't respond, or the other organizations that I reached out to, they just simply, their schedule didn't meet with my schedule. So Grace Place, they had a great way with communication, and they were able to follow up with me and really set a time their own side to meet with me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roberto Garcia again. Yeah, we'll mute everyone. Mute everyone. All right. Hi. So yeah, it's a little difficult. So I've been teaching this class now for like 7 years. So I've had a lot of group projects, a lot of students walk in my class, and I think I've improved as a teacher throughout that process. Hello, we're working. Yes, we're live. So I think it was one of the really good projects, right? One of my really good projects in my classes thus far, one that sticks out it was a group of 3 young women. They were all Latina, and they felt very strongly towards literacy, right? Making sure that students, young people know how to read, make sure that they're getting books. You know, studies show if you have books in your home when you're growing up, you're more likely to want to continue excelling, go to college, so on and so forth. So they made it a point to hold a literacy drive. And I was like, that's fantastic. They went to different areas, they had connections with different people of privilege, I guess I would say, where they had a lot of resources. So they got a lot of books donated. And I was like, that's fantastic. How can we take it a step further, right? And that's when they came up with the idea of not only providing books to this organization, the Gladiolus Learning Center, Gladiolus Learning, are they here? No,
I don't think so.
they're great. And so they took it a step further by actually raising funds to build a bookshelf. So not only were they providing them with the books, but they also provided them with bookshelves, and they took pictures, kids getting the books, and it was so exciting. We went to Eagle X, and they actually won an award while they were there. So it was, I think it was like Inspiring Eagles. It was something along those lines. I forgot. But it was one of the best projects, and I highlighted every semester because it really showed how the student really connects to their passion, finds a group of like-minded individuals in that class. They can really create something that can tell a story, right? Can tell a lot about themselves, can tell a lot about their community and their values. So that's been one of the best projects that I've had thus far.
And Roberta, how did they go about connecting specifically with their partner, and how did they find that partner?
So this was pre-pandemic. So it's been a minute. However, I do make it a point to make sure that we go through the service learning database. We look through all the options. I show them specifically the categories because that's what I think they are easiest to make the connections, right? What are you passionate about? What are those SDGs, those sustainable development goals, right? And if you find those things, those issues, those values, those beliefs that really are a focus of yours, you can find those individuals in the class as well. We hold group sessions where they walk around, they ask different questions. I was speaking with Janelle for a moment, and she was talking about how when you're talking to these students, sometimes you also have to take into consideration, hey, some of them can't drive or don't have a car, right? We all come from different backgrounds. So trying to have those conversations, I encourage them during those group sessions where they walk around and talk to different people to consider some of those things, right? What could prevent you? What are some challenges that you might face this semester? We all have so many things going on, right? It feels like every day there's another thing added to your plate. But when you're in this class, you're choosing to make your community, you're choosing to make this group, you're choosing to make this project a focal point, right, in the semester. So I try to scare them a little bit at the beginning. I'm like, if this is not the semester for you, take it next semester, take it over the summer, take it some other time when you have more time, because you do need time. This class requires that service learning component. So yeah.
Excellent. And so hopefully you've heard a couple key things. One is the community partner database. So that's the button I showed you on our homepage. You want to make sure that your agency's information is correct and that whatever email addresses are listed there, that somebody's responding to those. So you heard Sydney say, hey, we got a bad taste in our mouth from one agency because we emailed that email address and they never responded. So you certainly don't want that to be the first impression that students have, because they talk to each other. And so you don't want that out there. And then if it's incorrect, you can update your information there. And the other key piece that hopefully you heard is the service learning fair. We have about 80 to 85 agencies now coming to our service learning fairs, and it's the #1 place that students find their projects for the semester. So if you're not there, you're missing a key moment when students are deciding who they're going to work with for the semester. Question in the back?
Just to kind of go off of one of your comments, what about the organization that you went with when they replied back was like, yes, this is the organization? Because I know like students ghost organizations even after they put in the request, we send back what we're looking for and then they ghost. So I just kind of wanted to know like what stuck out to make you be like, this is who I want to work.
Question is, I'm just repeating for everyone online. The question is, what is the key thing that really made you choose who you chose?
Yeah, so I was looking more towards organizations that involved, because I want to focus more on child psychology. So any way with children, any organization that involved children, I was looking at. And I specifically chose Grace Place because when she did email me back, she allowed us to, she was like, hey, I want you guys to, I want to hold our own book fair. Gave us very minimal details, but gave us most of the creative freedom to do whatever we wanted to do. So it felt more like us as students had a more impact in that organization.
Just to add a little bit more, whoever doesn't mind. Sometimes it's not necessarily on your end either, okay? Because I will say, you have students in this class, you have a class of 35, and maybe by the halfway point, you've had 3 or 4 of them drop. So inevitably, some of those emails are just going to be from people who are no longer in the class and are probably no longer interested. So it's probably the best for you on your end that you didn't have to work with that individual. I'm telling you the truth.
And in a more formalized project like this, you will have a confirmation moment where they say, we're going forward with you. So there is sort of an interview moment in the first couple of weeks of a class like what we're talking about here, where students are reaching out. If there's a group of 5 students in a group, all 5 of them might be reaching out to different agencies to just get an idea. If we went with you, what would we do? If we worked here, what would this look like? What do you need done this semester? And that is a chance for you to pitch your organization. Why should they want to work with you and show some excitement that they're reaching out to you? And that does then, like Sydney was saying, sometimes serve as the key piece in them choosing you. But on the flip side, you're also sort of interviewing them a little bit of, are they going to follow through? Are they going to be more time than I'm going to get return at the end? And so you want to feel that out as well. Great. So what would you do? So Cindy and Roberto, from your perspectives, what would you do differently knowing what you know now when reaching out to potential partners?
Yeah, so I would say what I would do differently is if maybe an organization doesn't respond right away or hasn't at all, it might be because they haven't seen that email. So I would constantly, I did for an organization, I sent a second email where they actually did end up responding. And I kind of gave key details as why I was an impact towards their organization. So I kind of was trying to speak myself up and be like, I would be really interested in your organization, what I would provide to it.
Go ahead, Roberto. I have
Yeah, so when I think about regrets that students may have at the end of the semester, one sticking point that I try to always make clear at the beginning, go to the service learning fair. Go to the service learning fair. It is the easiest way to cut out a lot of that back and forth between emails or text messages or whatever it may be, social media. And I'm like, can we just formalize it and go back to day number 1 where we used to talk to each other face to face? And that service learning fair, it's typically what, week 2 or 3 at the start of the semester? Yeah, which is typically around that point where you're getting the students ready to make those connections. So I actually had a moment this semester with my civic engagement class where everyone was sharing what they were going to do this semester. And I asked them like, oh, and how did you make that contact? Because some people are always like, oh, I tried messaging and they didn't contact me back, or I thought we had something going. And then several of the people who had everything established and good to go was because they went to the service learning fair. It's an extra credit opportunity in my class, so incentivize it a little bit more. But yeah, if you are able to make it to that event, it really makes it so you get to know the people face to face much quicker. You can run your own quick little, oh, they seem like they're serious. They seem like they're actually passionate about these issues. I definitely want to make sure that I prioritize this connection right here, right? So if you can make it to the service learning fair, I always plug in most of my service learning, all my service learning based classes. So going to that is always something that I wish all my students would do at the beginning of the semester.
And when you sign up for the fair, anyone who signs up, we give a little best practice ask or request of you. So we ask you to come with a list of projects broken up on the direct, indirect advocacy and research, so that when students walk up to you and they say, I am looking for a 10-week project, you have some ideas in mind. Or if a student walks up to you and says, I'm just looking for an experience this Saturday, that's all I'm willing to commit to at this moment, then you also have some ideas in mind that you can hand them right then and there. And so using both the active citizen continuum conversation we had earlier and the 4 types of service conversation, coming to the fair with a list of projects that you've already brainstormed, you're ready to hand them over to a student and connect with a student, That's really a great best practice. And Regina, you're still here. So Regina, wave your hands so everybody can see you in the back there. So Regina also works with a ton of student volunteers, but she also works here. And if you have not come to Regina's table at the Service Learning Fair, she is the role model table. And one of the reasons I say that is because she very clearly lists out in very beautiful form everything a student can do, the number of weeks it might take and project timelines and things, so that a student walking up from a class has that, so they're looking at basically a menu of, oh, I can do this with Regina, I can do this, and what fits my schedule, what fits what I'm looking for. The more you can think through that ahead of time, the better your connection points are going to be with the students. You know?
Can I just say something that I've heard them both say more than once? They didn't get back to me. They didn't get back to me. If they've gone to the Service Learning Fair, and this certainly is my first rodeo, you're going to be one of a dozen or 24 organizations that they're reaching out to you to. And I've heard it many times from the kids who've come to us saying, you're the first one who got back to us. It does that. I mean, shame on us if we don't get back to them. They're going to discount you very quickly if they don't hear from you, because they're getting 1,000 emails a day as well. It doesn't take much to have a standard email ready to go. Thank you for your interest. We enjoy our experience with FGCU students. Here's what they've done in the past. Let's schedule a time to talk further. Send. Just have that ready to go, because you'll be off their list quickly if you don't get back to them that day.
Make a suggestion. We should, well, what I did wrong at Service Learning is I had them write their emails down on the paper, bad idea. It took me forever to just try to decode every email. So I'm thinking about doing like a QRC code next time to it not. I think that'll help us to have that quick return around. Because I was trying, but it wasn't working.
Yeah, go ahead.
We developed a little card with our QR code on it, that we just literally hand out, and they take it with them. We also have it at the table that they can use their phone with, but we also give it to them with our website information so that they've got it with them.
Yeah, and a best practice that Myrtle mentioned that I would just reemphasize is collecting data or information from them, so their phone or their email or both, so that you can follow up. Because if they are meeting with 12, 24 different agencies, that email from you may be the silver platter that they're looking for. Hey, this person's reaching out to me. This is great. I'm gonna go with them. Did I see another hand? Oh, yeah. Okay. Excellent. Matthew.
It's great to have projects or ideas. Could also be just open list of saying, hey, we're just looking for help, and anyone that if you have an idea, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, the question is, can it just be an open request of whatever you want? Yes, absolutely. The only downside, just something to think about, is sometimes you may have things, you probably have things on your to-do list that have needed done for a long time. This is your moment to tackle those things, and students don't know what those things are. So they may think left field and you're thinking right field, and it's just going to be a much more targeted and probably better result for you if you're telling them some bits of information about what you need done versus leaving it completely done.
Yeah, they very much like, it's easy to be told what to do, right? Because then you'll just have to fulfill those requirements. So I know that they love it when our community partners have things lined up for them. They're like, oh yeah, they've been telling us that for the past 5 years, they've been meaning this to happen, but it's been going on the back burner, and they're really excited. And typically those are the projects that really take off sometimes, because it's like, it's clear, this is what we need, and we can make this happen. They like things being very, very clear. Who doesn't?
And so we've mentioned communication a lot. Sydney, I'd love for you to share. So we've talked about email, and one of the things I'll say is Janelle's point's exactly correct, that they're waiting for your email response. So they're looking through their hundreds of emails for your email response, because they need to confirm it for class, they need to get the balls rolling, all of that kind of stuff. But I'm gonna throw a little bit of a wrench in here. That email is a little hard sometimes. So throughout the project planning process, well, before, after, I guess, just in general, what are the best ways to communicate with today's college student?
For today, I would say, I mean, because when you send it through email, it's hard to get across what you're trying to say. So what I did, if our schedules don't align to meet up at their organization, we do a Zoom call. And it could be a 10-15 minute Zoom call about maybe our progress on the project, what they expect from us, and et cetera.
And let's say it's not project-based and maybe it's a Saturday morning, 20 volunteers come out, and they serve with one of the agencies here, and the agency wants to follow up. What's best, email, phone, text?
I would say probably a text through the phone. Obviously, email our students aren't going to be checking their emails over the weekend. Well, at least most of them. I do check mine, but most of them aren't going to. So I would say a text right away as that notification comes right up.
And I've had agencies say a text feels too personal.
I would say we like that it's more personal. You know, we feel that you guys want to communicate with us, and it is having more of that personal relationship rather than that professional one.
Yeah. So if you're not texting students, you certainly may want to consider that. And there are platforms, even simple free things like Google Voice. You can text where you're, I don't know, some people don't want to use their personal phones, or you can't text from your work phone. So keep that in mind for sure. Our students are very text heavy right now. I'm sure it'll change in 5 years, but for now, that's where we're at. Pearl?
We had volunteer morning, and usually we ask them, we give them a time frame, or we volunteer from 9 to 5. Usually, have a minimum of 3 hours. Now, they had some that wanted to do 1 hour, and I graciously had to decline. 1 hour, because if it's an actual live event, you have the planning managers, it'll take them like 10-15 minutes just to kind of go over the tasks. So I'm not trying to minimize.
Yeah.
But graciously had to decline. I don't want that to be a mark against our association.
No. So that's a really good question for everyone online. The question is, if the opportunity is 3 hours long, but the student only wants to do 1 hour, what do we do? It's completely appropriate in that moment to say to the student, unfortunately, this is a 3-hour role. This is a 3-hour position. And if you're not able to fill this position for 3 hours, check back with us in the future, and maybe we'll have something for less amount of time. And that student can move on and try to find something else to do for 1 hour. I'm trying to think of why that student may have only wanted 1 hour, but yeah, you can certainly politely decline and then move on. Other questions? Are there any topics that you want to hear directly from our student rep, Sydney, about, other than communication and these class projects that we're talking about? Regina?
Learning, what did you want to get out of it? Like, what skills or experiences, like, other than the requirement, why did you want to do it?
So my professors here, I took the course with, and we're always talking about these skills, and that's those transferable skills. Whether that's written communication, oral communication, professionalism, all of those skills have to do with our future career, especially teamwork. We focused on teamwork within that class. And we worked with a group. We worked not only with our classmates, but we worked with that communication, developing those ideas and bouncing back ideas off of each other. So what we want to get out of there is we want to be able to make that impact on their organization, but we're also getting out of there our career readiness skills, those transferable skills where we can incorporate to our future careers.
And have you continued working with the agency that you?
I actually have, yes. A couple of weeks ago, I actually did a literacy day with them. So I came up with my own way, and their topic was vehicle. So I came up with my own way of teaching kids through learning like different vehicles. And a lot of different other organizations were there as well that intended, and the kids got to kind of look around and be able to learn different things.
Roberto, do you see students continuing on with their agencies after the projects?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, right? Sometimes they have really fantastic experiences and one or two of those group members may continue on. And sometimes it's not so great partnerships, and that's fine, right? Not everything's going to be a perfect match. However, my favorite opportunity that arises when they do continue those partnerships is when they get a position offered to them at the establishment, at the organization. I had a student offered a position at a museum. I forgot which museum it was, but they got offered a position and they decided to accept it after graduating. So having that lined up, these experiences can turn into professional employment after graduation. It can turn into employment right now, right? So it's like, that is my peak potential that I hope all my students meet. They're all not going to be there, right? And that's fine because we're all at different stages. But for those students that are really passionate and really focused and really value what this organization's doing, so much so that they get offered that position and then they accept it, I think that's like the ideal position to be in this course.
Yeah, and that follow-up piece is big. The students coming back to you. It's one of the biggest things that I mentioned when we talk about days of service. So we do have 2 days of service, one in August and one in October every year. And that's where we have maybe 200, 250 students who meet together on a Saturday morning, and we break them up into groups. We'll say, okay, you 20, you're going to community cooperative, you 20, you're going to Harry Chapin, and so forth. And even though those mornings are always a Saturday morning and they're only a couple hours, so only about 4 hours of work, sometimes agencies will say, I'm not open on a Saturday. I don't have staff on a Saturday. We're just not able to make that happen. One of the reasons I really emphasize trying everything you possibly can to make that happen is exactly what we're talking about here. Students return to where they had positive experiences, even if that positive experience was only a couple hours on a Saturday morning. So in this case, Sydney's experience was a full semester long, and she's returning there. But we have students who just have a couple hour experience, and you may think, well, it's only 3 or 4 hours. How much work am I really going to get out of them? In that moment, it may, yes, be about some of the work that you're going to get done that morning, but it's also about the relationship that you're starting to build and the seeds you're planting relationally in students across campus, because they have roommates, they have classmates, they have friends, they have fraternity and sorority brothers and sisters, and they all talk to each other. And they go back to where someone had a positive experience. And so the more you can just plant yourself in small ways into campus culture, the more that you'll have students reaching out to you more and more, like Sydney. Yeah, Jalexia.
So that's actually my story with service learning. So I started off as a volunteer essentially for United Way of Lee, Hendry and Glades in their community partnership schools department. That then transitioned into an internship position, and I graduated in May of 2022, and I'm full-time on staff since July of 2022. So that's my story of service learning.
Hey, our poster child. Yes, and thankfully that happens a lot, and we love to hear those stories. So if you ever have those stories and we're not already aware of them, please send them to us. Pearl. Yeah.
Going back to that, I guess program love it in writing success story. She started out as a volunteer with Art Fest, and she was in high school. She's actually one of the greatest dancing. Yes. About 2 years ago. But that's another, started off as a volunteer from high school. But I guess her field is in the arts, and she just gave it a go. Now, part two, my question is, do the volunteers have any special safety training? They, I mean, us being realtors, even at our age, you still have to continually be trained, to safe other outside environment. Do they offer that volunteers?
We really encourage, so in some classes, depending on what they're doing, they may go over some safety tips based on that topic or that partner. But we really encourage you as the partner, because you're the expert. You're the experts in your area, in the work you're doing. And sometimes it's not only safety, sometimes it's also what's appropriate. So, we always want you during those communication times before the service starts to communicate what's appropriate and what is safe. So for example, if you have students coming to work at a shelter and maybe they're just coming to clean or paint a mural or something, they need to know what's appropriate dress. what's, what's okay to wear, not just to get paint on, but also for the clients and customers that are around. Or, if there's safety aspects of things, you're going to know that far more than us. We do talk with them during our days of service where we're sending out a couple hundred. We have site leaders, student leaders who oversee a group. We talk with them about the basics of stay in groups. They should never be alone going somewhere while on site, because it's easy as partners to say, hey, I need one person to go around the corner and pick up this thing, and I need one person. It's moments like that that our site leaders are trained to say, actually, can we send 3 students together to go do that? So we talk about basic safety, but you all are going to know your topic specific safety measures, and we encourage you to use that. Yeah.
Kind of a question for both of you. When you were looking for your community partner, did you utilize the database? Did you use Google? What are the resources you use to find your community partner? And then what are you finding students are actually utilizing?
I would say early on, I used the database just to kind of look at organizations, but as there's like a long list, it was definitely hard for me to kind of look at each organization and kind of see what they wanted, because it was a short description. So what I really utilized was the service learning fair. Because with the service learning fair, I got a face-to-face contact. I was able to see the face in the organization and what they could do.
Yeah, and from what I hear my students share with me, it does seem like the database is at least the starting point. The service learning fair is built in my courses, so they also have to go to that. So some of them find their partners through those means. And then going off of what we've also shared is, I do think some of them already come with those connections. And if they're in a group of 5, which is typically what I assign, one of them will be like, hey, I have this connection. And then typically the other 4 are like, fantastic,
Yeah.
let's go there. So having those already pre-established connections, which might mean like you all can do some work in the high schools, right? So you can make those connections there, which I'm sure you're already doing, just to put another thing on your plate. Yeah, so having those connections early on, and some of them have their own lived experiences where they say, I benefited from this when I was young, and now I want to pay it forward, and that's what I want to do. So yeah, it's comes from a variety of different avenues, I guess.
So as we kind of wrap up this little session, I want to end with this question of what do you both think are ways that the partners here, or any of our partners, can more deeply and more consistently do to build connections through service with FGCU students?
I would say because students are more prone to attend the service learning fair, I would say really engage with the student. At times when I was going through the service learning fair, some people would, organizations would just give me a card or a pamphlet and a quick description. Students, and personally for me, I like to know exactly what am I going to do for your organization? How is it going to benefit that organization and actually me as well?
Yeah. First, I would just say, hey, I think you all are doing a lot already. So pat yourselves on the back and thank you all, because without you all, we would not be able to make these connections happen. So that's first and foremost. And second, this is something that I've also had to learn with my students, is being more patient. We just went through a pandemic where a lot of things were disrupted, and a lot of the normal ways of being and interacting are evolving and changing moving forward. So being patient, giving them grace through this period of readjusting and figuring out what our new normal is, because we're still doing it. Just being patient with them, because I know I have to do that too. And pat yourselves on the back again, because once again, you play a very valuable and key role in this partnership. So thank you again.
Yeah. And speaking about the pandemic, we have a surprising number of virtual service learning courses where students are not local, and they will still reach out to you doing projects, just like what you've heard Sydney talk about. And so when you're looking at that direct, indirect advocacy and research brainstorm list that you just made, you may also want to think about the things that students can do virtually for you. Social media accounts, making flyers. There is a lot that a student can do for you and take off your list without ever being local. And so really keep that in mind, because if you are closed off to virtual opportunities, you'll miss a whole population of students who can really do a lot with you and benefit from those experiences. So any final questions for Sydney or Roberto? All right, well, let's give them a hand. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you all. If anyone's interested in chatting, message me. rogarcia@fgcu.edu. Thank you all. It's great chatting with you all.
So I do want to show you real quick where you can find a lot of these resources that we're talking about on our website. So I showed you before, this is our homepage, and I showed you these 4 green buttons. Oh, is that shared? Sorry, we're going to share for the folks on Zoom. No, that's okay. All right, so on our homepage, if you are saying to yourself, how can I sign up for this service learning fair? How can I stay up to date with all the different opportunities? The biggest thing is to make sure that your information in our database is accurate, because that is who gets the information. So whoever is listed in our database as the points of contact, that's who gets the emails from our office to say it's time to sign up for the next service learning fair, or we have this great opportunity over the summer and we're looking for 10 partners to come. All of those messages come out from our office to those contacts. But if you are ever looking for any resource at all, we have all of our student resources here, all of our faculty resources here, and then all of our community partner resources here. And so hopefully most of you remember this page. You've seen this page when you initially signed up. But if you haven't looked all the way through, you can see we talked about objective-based service learning versus hours-based. We were talking about that earlier. You can read more about that right here. If you're ever looking or wondering, how do I verify service learning hours? That's all right here. You can read about it. Everything's linked. How do I connect with FGCU students? So pretty much everything we've been talking about this morning is linked under here. Here's the information about the database and how you join the database. We haven't yet even talked about our guided service trips, which are trips that we put together each week. Every single week, we pay students to take out other students who are volunteering so that they don't have to go by themselves. Sometimes students will say, I really want to go do service, but I don't want to go by myself. I feel uncomfortable, or I'm new to the area, or I'm a freshman and I'm new to the campus. And so we do guided service trips. So if you're interested in being one of the sites that our groups go to, you can certainly learn about that here and email me if you're interested in that. And then we have all these events. Service Learning Fair. Here's more information, and to sign up for our Service Learning Fair is right there. Our days of service that I was mentioning. If you want to be a site that students go to on that August date, or the Make a Difference is in October, that October date, the links are always here. So point being, you don't need to remember everything. All you need to remember is to come to our website, and then all the information is always there. Even if you're working at 11 o'clock at night and you're like, oh, I need that link, everything is here. Here's how to submit a service learning request. So I showed you that database that students are using. I called it the digital bulletin board. Your form to submit it is there. So everything is here, including past workshops like this. So I mentioned earlier that we've done some topics in the past, like we had an hour presentation about internships and so forth. You can go back and watch the past workshops and scroll through to find the topics that you want there. So all of that is on our website, because I know we're talking about all these great resources. And yes, they're linked in your agenda, but I also want you to know, in case you lose that agenda and you aren't sure where any of your notes are, you can always come to our website and find things there.
Does that go to the professors? Where is that posted?
So when you put in a project request where it said submit service learning project, that comes in to our office, and Peter over here actually processes every single request, and he makes sure that it goes live into that digital bulletin board that I was showing you, and students scroll through there. So that's the one where I said there's 149 live opportunities right now. Those are just the ones that are active. The date hasn't passed yet for those. Everything goes in there, and that's what I always suggest. So even if you have a very specific type of student in mind, like you really want a journalism student, we've had some of these recently, we want a journalism student to write a feature article about one of our volunteers, because we want to be able to put it in our newsletter or shop it around. Even though it sounds like a very specific opportunity, that's your starting point. always start by submitting it into that form. And then what we do on our end is as those opportunities come in, Peter processes them. And then every Friday, he sends a list to our team of here's everything that's come in this week. It elevates it to us to look and specifically me to look at, are there any opportunities that came in that would be really great for a faculty member to use in their class? So for example, we want a feature article written about one of our volunteers. I'm going to send that to our journalism faculty and say, hey, do you have some students in your classes, or is this a good class project for you to take on? So we're constantly making those connections, but the starting point is to just put it out there for all 16,000 students first. The other key piece of that is sometimes students aren't a journalism major, but they're really interested in writing and creative writing, and maybe they're a business major. They may really benefit from that opportunity. So we never want to shop it only to one population in case students want to do something that maybe doesn't match their major. Yeah, thanks.
Research or just normal, or the service learning opportunity.
Just part of the service learning opportunity. So anytime you have a need at all, put it in the form, and then we will shop it out from there.
There's two different forms.
There's two steps. So one is getting first your agency approved and in the database, the agency database. And then the other is every single time you have a need. And that form you just want to fill out as many times as you have things come to your mind. If you're driving home at night and you're like, oh, I could use 10 people to do this, fill out that need, fill out that form. Yeah, so right here where it says submit a service learning request, this is what you want to fill out. It says please submit here. So this form is every single time you have any opportunity at all, fill out that form. That's what goes to Peter, and then he's going to put it into this database. He's going to put it into here. So when students are clicking on find service learning opportunities, they're going to see so everything you see posted right here was submitted through this form.
The service learning objective based, the research based, the research.
Tell me, wait, ask that again.
The research based, we submitted in a different platform.
Oh. In here, it says right here for research assistants, please see. So in the form, there is a separate form, because remember earlier I was saying we do have a separate office for research and scholarly innovation. And so those are those longer term, bigger picture research projects. So when you get to this form, it'll, as long as you're reading through the lines, it'll point you to the research form if it's research projects like that. And I will say, sometimes people fill out the form, the service form, and we can tell it's going to be a long-term research project. We'll take care of that for you. So it's not the end of the world if you fill out the wrong form between those two. Yeah. Jenna?
Is there a way for being partner to see what we've already submitted? It needs to be edited or deleted.
Yes, from the digital bulletin board. So when you can come here and you can click find service learning opportunities. And so, so you have one post right now. I saw yes, there we go. Please share.
So Peter can send you the dimensions of the cover image. When you submit a opportunity for the form, also email him an image that has your logo up in the corner so they can identify which opportunities are with your organization. And then have something in image that shows what they'll be doing. And if possible, a red arrow because that can hurt.
A red arrow because what? Oh, and Peter, go ahead.
More detail you can give me, the better. A lot of mistakes that people make is they'll send in a request and they'll say, I need volunteers. That's it. That's great. You need volunteers. What kind of volunteers do you need? What are they doing? Because if you don't give me that information, when I have to do things, I have to do digging. And that I might not be the best person to describe what you guys need done, all right? The other thing is, yes, photos are great, especially if it's a photo of like specific event flyer that says like, hey, it's happening on this date. It's happening at this time. This is who's doing it. Because if you don't give me one of those, then what I have to do is I have to pay for that as well. Worst case scenario, I'll do something very generic. And we don't want that. That's regretted protection. So more information, you have photos, fine, that's great. People see more success when they give you that stuff. And then if you have something specific that you need, like, hey, I know this was posted, but this isn't sounding as, quite right. You can email me and say like, hey, can you make sure to mention this? Or, oh, I forgot to say this. Can you say this? Feel free to do that.
So are those posting dates or are those like event dates? That's right on the screen.
These are the dates. So you can hit, when you fill out the form, you'll put a start date and you put an end date. These are the start dates. So you may sometimes see like a date up here that's old. Like it's not the case right now, but sometimes it'll say like January 5th. And it looks outdated. We tell students as long as it's visible, it's still available. It just means that the end date hasn't passed yet. So we see this a lot with like tutoring opportunities where they say, we just need tutors from January to December. And so it'll look in here like the opportunity. And there's no way for us to change that. We keep trying to do that. But yeah, it's the end date for the opportunity.
When we send in the request, what is the time frame in average that we can expect that we will hear somebody back?
Peter works Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So he submits, he processes it every time he's in. So if you submit it on Thursday, he'll process it on Friday. And that means it's live. And then, like I said, every Friday he sends us a list of everything that came in that week. And then we start to kind of shop around. And so then within the next week, I may send out your opportunity to specific populations if it is appropriate for that. If it's just, we need 20 people to set up tables or chairs, I'm probably not going to send that to a specific faculty member. But if we're looking for, surveys to be created and conducted for this, I may send that to a specific faculty member. So depending on your topic and what you're looking for, it could be as short as a week or two, or it could be as long as a couple semesters if we're looking for a certain faculty member to take it on as part of the course.
In April, right? So I want to know like if it's too late to send a request, to get the people, or do we still have time, all those.
It's never, I say this hesitantly, but also not, it's never too late. The more time, the better, because it will move up the page as the date gets closer. So as you scroll down, you'll see the start dates are later and later. So it will move up the page. So when the student is scrolling on their phone, they'll see it. And so keep that in mind. If you submit it 2 months ahead of time, which I think is ideal, you may not hear back from students right away. But as it moves up the page, you'll probably hear back from more and more students. They're also searching by keywords on the left-hand side. So, we want to make sure your keywords match something a student would search for if they're wanting to work with you. Abigail? Oh, Jordan.
Best way to engage with professors, like a professor or city engagement professor.
Yeah, the best way to engage with professors, that's a great question. So certainly, if it's an opportunity we can get in here, we get in here first. And then if I see it, I may approach you. But if you already have something in mind? Yeah.
She was great with getting her students to come out formal briefing specifically. So we gave it to students. We coordinated it with her. They all showed up for the event.
Was it part of a course she was teaching? Oh, it's part of colloquium. Okay, great. So we have 51 sections of colloquium every fall and spring, and I don't remember how many over summer, but there's a lot. And we can certainly shop that to other colloquium instructors if you thought that was a good match between the colloquium class. I will say every professor does colloquium a little differently, looks a little different. And so we can shop that out for you and say, hey, this was really successful with another colloquium class. If you wanted more than just one class, we could certainly do that. So if you have ideas like that already, where you know kind of the course you're looking for, we can shop that pretty easily for everyone. If you're not sure which professor or which course topic might be a good match for you, but you would like to have a partnership with a faculty member, let me know and we'll talk through some of those details and we can kind of shop that around and see. It does tend to be a semester or two out because they're a semester or two out and they're planning usually. But let me know. Great. Okay. So last but not least, Jessica Ray is here. I mentioned her earlier as leading our department. And so now you will get to hear a little bit. So if you want to introduce yourself, and then we were planning, I know we are behind schedule a little bit. We're planning to talk about fundraising. So go ahead and introduce yourself. We'll maybe take some questions on fundraising. We have a couple key points, but we'll keep it short. That way we still have time for other things.
So some of you are familiar faces.
Microphone, sorry.
Hello. Some of you are very familiar faces to me because I used to be Justin, and I was the director of service learning, maybe even when some of you were in school here, because I see some familiar faces as far as students too. So I was the director of service learning for nearly 10 years. And then I got to expand my role. And now I oversee service learning, internships, and career development because they are all so connected. I mean, I think Jalexia is the perfect example of this. Her experiential learning through service led to an internship. It gave her the experience and the skills to get that full-time position. It also helped her explore what her interests and passions were and led her to that perfect career path. So that's why those three offices are together. I'm a huge supporter of this work and these partnerships. And I also stay in the classroom. So I teach every semester Foundations of Civic Engagement class and partner with many of you in here, my students do. And I teach an honors service lab course where we have one partnership. And that's a different approach to service learning as well. And it works fabulously. So thank you for allowing me to be here today. I've got lots of years of experience of student projects that I can share with you. So
Yeah, so that's a good segue if we want to start. So this little mini time is about fundraising. So fundraising can be a really great way to engage our students as a win for you, as we talked about wins, as a win for you, but also a win for our students as they learn how to educate and advocate and fundraise for a cause. And so it can be a really big win, but there are also some pitfalls. And so we want to kind of talk through how it can be a big win and how to avoid the pitfalls. So do you want to share an example?
yeah, so we talked yesterday maybe, and I was like, okay, let me like comb through lots of years of fundraising projects that my students have done. And I have multiple examples, and some can be so simple and some can be a very large, yes, project, a very large semester-long project. So I'm going to tell you something that is so simple at one end and kind of head to the other end. All right.
And we chose this topic because this is the one thing that we know. No, you will never find anyone who's like, no, we don't want more funds raised. Like
we were joking. We were like, no, we don't need any money, said no nonprofit ever, right? We were like, no, nobody's going to turn that away. So, I mean, the point of this conversation, though, is always to make sure that if you are working with students and having them engage in fundraising for your organization, number one thing is that they need to realize that this is connected to advocacy and education, because people only join you or the students in efforts to raise funds when they know about the issue that's connected with your agency and they believe in that issue. So there's a lot of education that I integrate into my course that's about effective ways to inspire others to serve or act. And in fundraising, we want them to respond by donating, but we have to make sure that they know about your organization, what your needs are, and the why behind it. They always, always, always need to know the why behind it for fundraising, or if they're filling in a hole on the beach, right? They need to know, I just saved a tortoise because I filled in a hole. I saved a baby turtle, So make sure they are always understanding the why behind what they're doing. When they believe in it, they're going to be much more effective at getting others to support and believe in the work that you're doing. So built into this advocacy education, our students can register with our campus reservations and get a table. This happens often. In my class today that I just came from, we did a lesson on how to inspire others to serve. And we talked about ways to have a catchy grabber, to put a face on the issue, to have a call to action, to provide the information, to communicate in these ways to be successful. So that's part of what you can help too with, because you can help them understand more about your organization, give them stories to tell, because when they know the stories, they can tell those stories, and the stories put a face on the issue and get others feeling that passion as well. So our students can register for a day, 2 days, 3 days, and do a tabling event at FGCU, and they can advocate, educate. They could get students to register for an event that they're organizing. They could get potential future volunteers for you by having a sign up that they can provide those names to you. But they can also have a fundraising. Maybe if you give $1, you get to write your name on a shoe and the shoe gets hung up on the table. It doesn't have to be anything. If they feel moved, students and faculty and staff that pass by could put $1, $5, $20 in it. They can do that simply at a tabling event, but it's not just like a jar sitting out there and like, hey, you want to put $1 in this, right? It's the learning that's happening with it. So that is like the most basic version of it, would be having a tabling event that also had fundraising along with it. And I'm going to take you to the opposite end, which is full-fledged golf tournament planned and executed by my class, right? So they had a connection with a golf course and they did it all. But that was a class effort, or at least a group in a class, and they got prizes. They did the scheduling. They had to recruit golfers. That is very in-depth. That's not going to happen every semester in every class, but it can. And it happened in a class where they were very connected with the community partner and they were like, what more can we do? And they knew about a need. And so those are like one extreme to the other extreme. And then there's versions in between. What were you going to say?
Well, and we talked just a little bit ago about when you're first interacting with a student or faculty member, learning what their objectives, what their hopes are, timeline, depth, all of that kind of stuff. And so this is a perfect example of, if they tell you they're looking for a 10 to 12 week project, you may want to think bigger picture. But if they say, we're just looking for a smaller scale project, okay, tabling might be the end of this week. So you want to feel out their intentions and their objectives as much as your own objectives. The other big piece is to keep in mind that more so with this type of project with fundraising than anything else, you want to train them. So we talked about giving them stories and those pieces, but you also want to think about they're going to be the face of your organization, even if they're just tabling on campus. Someone walking by is learning about your organization from someone that's not you. And that can be scary. So you want to make yourself feel as confident as possible in letting them do that by training them. And, you know, in the beginning, being there with them if you can, because that's a really great asset for them to be right next to you and gaining that experience with you. But if you're not able to the first couple of times, certainly make sure that they are trained. The best cases I've seen is where they have the students present to them about their agency, even like a 5-minute little spiel, put that, kind of test them, make sure that they can speak about your organization in the way that you want them to, and that they have the information correct, and then release them into the wild and let them go.
Or even if you can't have them physically do it, maybe they give you the bulleted point. My students write a pitch script, right? And it's applying the criteria that we've talked about. What is your catchy grabber? What is your face on the issue? What are 3 to 5 statistics about the organization? And if you have materials, for example, if you have trifolds, that it would be helpful for them to hand out, well, all of your information is in there. So if they are getting their information from your information, it's pretty solid that they're going to be sharing the right information, right? If you have tablecloths that you say, sure, come pick up tabling supplies, and just make sure you say, and I need them back by this date. So if you have tabling supplies, handouts, a presentation board, or if you need a presentation board, maybe that's something that could be a project for future Foundations of Civic Engagement classes. And then if that project board is created, that's something that you have beyond that semester that is beneficial to you. And then you would teach them what needs to go on this board. What are your expectations? Maybe they can give you a sketch up, a mock up of what it might look like. And then you can agree on those things. So.
And it's great to set goals, but make sure your goals are realistic. So if they say, working for 4 weeks with you, setting a goal of $1,000 is probably not realistic.
It can happen though.
It can.
I tell students, I say, I'd rather you aim here and achieve this than say, we're going to raise $20 and you got $20, right? So.
Yeah. And certainly working with, I mentioned this before for any project, but working or looping in the professor as much as possible. But keep in mind, students don't want to feel disappointed. So making sure that goal is somewhat reasonable, so that it's a win for them and they feel like they accomplished something for you as much as you got something out of it as well. And even if they raised $10, it's still $10 you didn't have before.
And I was just trying to think of some other ones. So we have local restaurants that will do benefit nights. And so then the students still, though, they need to educate, they need to advocate, and then they need to recruit people to come to that Chipotle night, right? And then your organization gets 15% of all the profits. It would be great if you have a database that you could send it out to, and you have people that live in this vicinity. So if that advertisement goes out to your database as well as FGCU students, faculty, and staff, then we're going to increase the number of participants. And then that's a project that's really working together, right? We're sharing each other's resources. And that's another example. And our students are creative. If they're coming to you with this idea, usually it's because they are creative. I've had a poker night. I have had students that can crochet. And they've made, because they were working with Keep County Beautiful, they made little jellyfish and octopi, and they crocheted them and they sold them, and then the money went. And then they had like an artistic event where you could paint your own recycled bottle cap. And so just our students can be very creative. And if they have those ideas, I would say, let them go with that. Yeah.
We've had some, any question?
Service learning, the tabling events they can sign up for, would that be open to the interns that
Yes. Yes. The only thing is that so the intern, as long as you're nonprofit, not a charge. So if the student is interning on behalf of the nonprofit and tabling and educating and advocating, yes. No, they're through, so our students would go through campus reservations. And so that's just a different website. But if they don't know, they can, I would say, ask your teacher. Or if the teacher doesn't know, I hope they ask Justin.
And
Yeah.
we've had some questions this morning also about tracking hours. And so when it comes to fundraising, one of the big things to remember is that they're getting hours for hours spent. So across the board, whether we're talking about fundraising or not, an hour is an hour, a half hour is a half hour. We can never, ever, ever give time for time not spent. So you can't say, I really need somebody for this Saturday. I'm willing to give 4 hours for every 1 hour or we can't do that because all of our data goes up to the state because we are a graduation requirement. So the data has to be accurate. So when we say a student has done 80 hours, they actually need to have spent 80 actual clocked hours. And so that said, when it comes to fundraising, it can be really tempting to say, raise $200 and I'll give you 20 hours. It just doesn't work like that. It's about time spent and what they're doing to advocate, educate, and fundraise all at the same time.
But it would actually be a substantial amount of hours if they're communicating with you to learn more about your agency, they're doing research on your website and with your materials, they're creating a pitch script, they're meeting and planning who is going to be doing what piece of a presentation board, they're emailing campus reservations and scheduling and reserving that space. And then they're meeting at that space, setting it up and presenting for 3-hour chunks, multiple days per week. So it really does, all of that counts toward their service because it's service that they're providing to bring awareness and resources back to you.
Questions, comments, concerns, excitement about fundraising?
We have a really great relationship with Dr. Mari being studies and through her as well, she helps with the sponsorship. Now, as an association, we all would like to be able to give back. So I know at one point you guys wanted to do an Asia Fest right here in FGCU. Unfortunately, because the time is just not possible. So if we are in a position to provide, some services, as gratitude as well, who would be the contact person for that?
Are you going to talk about Give Day?
I mentioned it once. I'm about to bring it up.
I was like, well, if you're talking about resources toward this amazing office and all that it provides to you and FGCU in this community, Give Day would be a perfect place to say, let's put resources where we know they're going to be utilized in a way that's going to benefit FGCU students and this community. And by supporting Justin's office and service learning here at FGCU, that is an amazing way to do that.
Today and tomorrow, or is it?
Starts at noon. Oh,
Started right now.
it's officially noon. Give Day has officially begun. So, and it goes from noon to noon.
And it doesn't close. So if you forget and it's tomorrow at 1:30, you can still give.
Don't make us nervous though. I just do want to say something special about this Give Day is it's the only time that we are like coming together as a campus to reach out to the community to say, focus on what touches you at FGCU, but what the university does is if we as an office raise $1,000, they meet that. So for us as an office to take the time to reach out to our community, to our stakeholders, to our faculty, staff, and community partners, it is so beneficial to do so at this time frame because it doubles our efforts. Yeah.
You give $1, it turns into 2. So yeah, this is a huge way to support. In addition, if you have a topic that you want to bring to campus. So if it, you know, whatever that topic is, we can find the appropriate office to at least connect you with and explore that further. So if you wanted to have a festival here and it supports the student objectives, we could connect you with an appropriate office for that.
And were you connected with the newly revised Asian Student Association? Oh, okay, well,
Like-
I have a student in my class who is a part of that. And just give me your card before you leave.
Yeah, other questions? Okay, so this is up here. It's also on your agenda, as I mentioned on the right-hand side at the top. Everything we provide is free and it's a huge resource for you all. So if you're at all able to give or your agency is able to give, we would love that. I do want to share just a couple other quick things before then we're going to break for lunch, and during lunch allow you to network and get to know each other in the room. We often hear that that's one of the most beneficial times so that you can meet each other in the room. So let me just share a couple other quick things that are on the agenda that I didn't get to earlier. You know what, I'm going to leave that up there, but on your agenda, I think underway on the front, under ways to engage with FGCU students. We talked through this. I showed you on our website where those links are. We talked through everything, but what I want to point out are the dates. I guess it's at the top of the back side. It says WOW Day of Service. I want to just point out those dates so that you can hold those dates in your calendar. I mentioned how important it is to make sure that you are present. And one of the sites that students go to for our Make a Difference, or for WOW and Make a Difference Day. So you see that WOW Day of Service is August 26th and Make a Difference Day is October 28th. So certainly put those in your calendar, hold those mornings. It's always 8, well, students meet here at 8, so they would get to you by 9. It's always 9 to about 1 on both those days. And then the Service Learning Fair for the fall, we've emphasized how important it is to be at the Service Learning Fair if you want to connect with students. That date is right there at September 5th. And then one of the dates coming up that you got a quarter sheet flyer when you came in is Eagle X. It's Community Engagement Day at Eagle X. So you'll see on that flyer, there are 4 components of the Eagle X showcase. This is our end of year FGCU showcase of all the amazing or exceptional, as Jessica Ray likes to say, exceptional. It's all the exceptional things that our students are doing. And so you'll see those exceptional things fall into 4 categories. We oversee, obviously, the community engagement projects. And if students present something that they have done with you, so we're talking about all these class-based projects and all these amazing things students can do, they can then apply to present there. If they're chosen to present, they can win awards. If they win an award, they win cash for you. There's a cash value to the awards, and it's small, but it's something. And so they get the presentation experience, they get the showcase experience. Everyone, though, is welcomed and encouraged to come and see the exceptional projects. So when you walk into Alico Arena on April 21st, so coming up just next month, you'll see the entire floor of Alico Arena filled with student projects. And 1 quarter is community engagement, 1 quarter is all the research projects, 1 quarter is internship projects, and 1 quarter is all leadership projects. So if you're working with interns, they can present. If you're working with community engagement and service learning projects, they can present. Often students don't think to present because they don't think our biggest challenge is they don't think their project is worthy enough. And we're always like, you're worthy, it's worthy, what you're doing is great, present. So if they also hear that from you, it's all the more encouragement that they need. Now, their deadline to apply to present is March 24th. So if you are working with any students now that should present their work here, you're thinking to yourself, what they're doing is amazing, they should present here. It's March 24th for them to apply. But where we want all of you to come is to come and see the projects and help judge if you're willing to help evaluate and determine who those winners are. We don't have you judge if you're the partner, we don't have you judge their project. But yes, we need help evaluating those projects. So that is a huge date that is coming up on April 21st. You will not leave not inspired. I should say, you will definitely leave inspired. So that's on there. And then looking at the other parts of the agenda on the back page there, the post-service engagement, we talked about this of verifying service hours and communicating student names back to us when you're done engaging with them. And then under the tracking hours section, we mentioned 1 hour of time needs to always equal 1 service learning hour. You can never give extra credit or extra hours for anything. And that we talked about the student needs to track the hours themselves and that you'll get an email. The onus is on the student to do the tracking, but we do ask that you make sure in a timely manner to verify those hours. Heavy communication times, you see that 4th bullet point under tracking hours. Heavy communication times is at the beginning and the end of each semester. The reason for that is all these classes that have service learning and are working with you, if they're in a class, they're supposed to track their hours before the class ends as part of the grade for the class. They're supposed to track those. So you're going to get a ton, if there's 35 students in a class and you're working with the entire class, you're going to get 35 emails all at once, times 2. Because remember, if you're working with a student, you get 2 emails, one saying the student's working with you and one saying how many hours they did with you. So that's a lot. A best practice can be, and some agencies have done this, where you set up a specific email address at your agency to just be what students use when they're verifying hours. So keep that in mind. If you want it just to be, volunteer, FGCU volunteer requests at communitycooperative.org, like whatever that is. And then you tell your students that you work with, hey, use this when you're verifying hours. Keep in mind though, somebody actually has to remember to go and check that email address. So beginning and end of semester is a heavy time because everybody's wrapping up their class and they need all those hours verified. So you can expect an influx of emails at that time. Beginning of the semester though, is because if you are a graduating senior, that's your deadline so if you're graduating in May, this May, your deadline for your service learning hours to be complete was February or end of January. So at the beginning of every semester is those graduating seniors for that term have to get it all in at the beginning of that final semester. So you will get an influx from seniors who sometimes, unfortunately, I worked with you 3 years ago. Do you remember me? Can you verify my hours? And so that's the beginning of the semester. The end of the semester are more the people you've been working with. And then general updates. Most of these we've mentioned. We do have a new logo. This is our new logo, and the other format has the bird on it. So if you are using anything with our logo on it from